One. All right, gentlemen, welcome to one of my favorite times of the year. And of course, because of that, one of the most exhausting times of the year. In fact, I have a pillow right over here and everything else. So if it gets a little crazy tonight and I fall asleep, Anthony, just take over for me for a few minutes.
Yeah. I don't know if
Okay,
you
maybe
want
not.
me hosting anything right now.
That's probably a good. You know what? You know what? That's probably a good idea. This is the point where everybody introduces themselves. Start with Jay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jay Kaplan. Happy draft day. And Rabbi, you are correct. This is one of the most exhausting show weeks of the year for all of us with the amount of research we do to make sure that we can talk adequately to all of y'all out there about what's about to go down in Green Bay. Great football town. I love the way they showed up and showed out tonight.
I'm Anthony Strait, and I'm going to go old school about introduction. Anthony Strait, tailback, Hofstra University.
I was thinking
Roll
more of a
Tide, baby.
fullback. I was thinking more of a fullback, but Joe, go ahead.
I left my bicycle at home, so I can't do top 10 today.
That
I'm
is
I'm
true.
just here as a top 10 guest.
He is a top 10 guest on the top 10. That is Joe Tufaro. And my name, of course, again, is Steve Rabinowitz. Welcome to the On the Sports Slides NFL Draft Special 2025. So, the frozen tundra of Green Bay is set to host this 2025 NFL Draft. Visuals look amazing, as you can say. Let me say also that Vince Lombardi would be proud that the NFL has given the honor to this prestigious city. Let me also say that considering now that Roger Goodell is riding in a bike, Vince Lombardi might also want to roll over in his grave. Either one of these is an acceptable answer. We'll look at the draft from all angles tonight, and I mean even those angles that we promise that you haven't thought of yet. And if you do think of others, let us know on comments after you subscribe to facebook.com/ on the sports lines and youtube.com/ on the sports lines. You have the power. Why is Little Wayne there, for God's sakes? My lord. All
I think
right.
he's a Packers fan.
He is, but I
He's a
don't.
Packers fan.
No, no. All right. As we get
Yes,
into the
Joe?
90, as we get into the 90th NFL draft, we start with this, gentlemen. This is a class that is definitely weaker than previous years, especially with two top QBs that might not have been higher drafted than the 12th pick. Bo Nix did last year. So anybody can start the room. I'll start with you, Jay. The weakness of this class doesn't actually make up for the depth that it might have coming in through it.
No, I mean, Rabbi, you and I were talking about this when we were prepping the show that while there doesn't seem to be a lot of sizzle in this year's draft, there is plenty of stakes. So, I know, with mock draft season, media is pushing all these types of narrative, and that's fine. That's why I pay very little attention to the preponderance of talk on social media and draft, mock drafts. But there's definitely a lot of depth here where you may not find your next star player in the first round, but you definitely, if you're smart with your picks, you can definitely fill a lot of holes. You can definitely find guys who are going to be solid contributors to your team for years to come. Just may not be in round one.
Anthony, I'm going to actually throw you a different type of question, and it's something I had heard earlier from I hate to say it, a mock draft podcast that I was hearing. My apologies, Jay.
Okay.
Um,
Do it,
there's a
Joe.
lot, yeah, there's a lot of stars in this draft, the Ashton Genties of the world. There's a lot of like niche picks out there, but for teams like the Giants, for teams like the Patriots, for teams even like the Raiders, don't you think their focus should more be on building more of a team, because those are luxury items in those stars that you can have. What they really need to do is build. A lot of these teams need to build just a dearth of talent in this draft.
Well, the teams you mentioned have a lot of holes that one superstar is just not going to do it. And look, we have I mentioned Travis Hunter before we went on the air. I would be surprised if he fell in the top five. Now he plays offense and defense, but in the case of the Giants or in the Raiders, they got some definitely needs up front as far as interior alignment, both sides of the football. A team I'm going to talk about, obviously, during the first round, the New England Patriots. They have a quarterback, but they have to put the pieces around them. So that's what this draft is about. And like, to add on what Jay said, this is not exactly the Red Lobster, but you'll take sizzle in a heartbeat. And the fact that in the fact that you may not have the home run in round one, but you'll take a ground rule double or a couple of bloop singles in the later rounds of this draft. And this is a draft that should be more about depth if you are smart, or if you are Kevin Costner in the movie Draft Day, and you're somehow able to wheel and deal your way into everything you want. This should be a draft if you're in the war room. Um, that you should be thinking about how to fill out your team, not just for next season, for the next 3-4 years down the line. As far as, okay, who can make an impact as far as spot duty, or who can come in and maybe win the starting role in training camp. And for me, what's going to be the interesting thing is with the local teams as well they go, because these are two teams that really do have a lot of needs on both sides of the football. And we see some mock drafts that had the Giants taking a quarterback and with their number 3 pick. And the Jets, I've seen a couple of different mock drafts as far as what they're going to do. I'm just interested to see what exactly Brian Dable and obviously the front office is thinking about with the Giants. As far as the Jets and new head coach Aaron Glenn, I kind of have a mentality. I think I have an idea of what he wants to do. Being a kind of a defensive mastermind, a guy who played for Bill Parcells, and Bill Parcells' mantra is always to build your teams inside out. So I'll be really interested to see where exactly he's gonna go. Is he gonna go lineman? Is he gonna go tight end? Has some mock drafts as predicted, and to try to give Justin Fields some weapons. But it's gonna be a really fun night to see. That's for sure.
Joe, we kind of talked about it with our show on Monday. The quarterbacks, actually, we talked about it a few weeks ago. The quarterbacks of this draft are kind of a little more overhyped just because of the position of need for a lot of different teams. And out there, what would be the best suggestion to you in this draft? Like, do you think there's enough talent in the middle of these rounds for somebody to get a signal caller that will be starting within 2 years?
Yeah, and I think that's what you got to look at. You're not looking at somebody, except maybe this first pick, who's going to go in there and light the place on fire, and you're not going to just hand your team over to some of these guys. I wrote to Jay a couple of months back telling him what I thought the Giants should do. And, you want to do somebody who's going to be a little bit of a project, but somebody who can obviously watch for a while, somebody who can learn the system, learn to play in the NFL. I agree
nailed
with
that one. You'll see later.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I think that it's just simpler to do it that way. And as we talk about this draft being more of a depth builder, we always talk about this just before the start of the season is if you have places where you're weak, not only, you may not find the starter there, but it's really good to find somebody who's going to come in, can play special teams to start out with, can learn how to be a pro. And I think the strength of this draft, comes down to defensive linemen, which aren't always as popular, interior defensive linemen. Find maybe some linebackers. We even went through the wide receivers the other day and said, okay, there's a couple of guys, but again, nobody who makes you just go crazy and jump up and down. So it actually will be more of an interesting draft because it's not top heavy. It's not quarterback heavy. It's going to be who does a really good job through the entire draft to pick up some guys that make their team. I always remember the 2011 Giants started all 7 of their picks throughout the year, and every one of them played in the Super Bowl. And that's the kind of draft you dream of, right? That guys actually come in and can contribute.
And one thing that I've seen, interestingly enough, in some of these drafts out there is I feel like day 2, the second and third round is probably, at least in this case, more important than day 1 for many reasons. I like seeing a lot of the depth in that spot, skill position wise, this year, because I think the first round is really for a lot of line play, a lot of edge rushers, a lot of linemen in that spot, and people that are luxuries for some teams and necessities for others. But I think one thing that just doesn't really seem to get a lot of attention in years, except in those final draft grades that you get on a Sunday, and then you're like, why does this Jets A mean anything 3 months down the line? Because it means nothing. Is I think that, like, in the days of, and we're going to be very big homers here, Jerry Reese had so many good drafts when he was Giants GM. Ernie Accorsi had so many good drafts when he was GM. This is where the GMs make their money tonight. They don't make it on their first round pick. They make it on the amount of people that they pick that'll start. And honestly, now you almost have to have them starting pretty close to immediately. You can have projects in like the fourth through seventh rounds, but first 2 days, you need to get some starters fast and quickly because that's how the NFL is these days. You want players who can be building blocks, and especially if you can get them for cheap.
Yeah,
That's
Rob,
something that really makes me interesting when you go through tonight.
I agree with you on that. I mean, obviously, you're hoping that with your first round draft pick, you're finding a plug and play day one starter. But the guys you pick in the second and third round on day two, if they're not necessarily immediate starters day one, your thought process has got to be that they're going to be rotational players to start and eventually, get more and more snaps as the season goes on. A couple of storylines I'm going to be watching in the first round, and I think you guys will agree with me. Where does Shedeur Sanders land? He's become the ultimate wild card in this first round. And who, if anybody, trades into the back end of the first round to try and grab a quarterback who ideally probably could have been had in the second round? So those are what I'm going to be interested to see.
Yeah, and I think a lot of mock drafts, again, there's that word that a lot of people hate. But Jackson Dart has really been the name, and I don't know if we'll be on the air when we get to when we get to possibly a possible trade back up for a certain team in blue, maybe wanting him, and possibly some rules up. So that's going to be very interesting as we go forward tonight. Anthony, is there anybody that you would be surprised to see in terms of the quarterbacks? We'll talk about them a little more later on, but especially in this draft itself, is there anybody who you would be surprised to see who you think should be a first round pick that hasn't really been talked about right now as a first round pick?
I think, like I said, I'm kind of with Jay on this one because I've been kind of interested to see what's going to happen with Shedeur Sanders. I think you all know what in the last few days, some anonymous, I hate that word, GM came out and said that it was the worst interview he's ever done. He's arrogant.
You sure he wasn't interviewing Dion? Are you sure he just wasn't interviewing Dion the whole entire time?
Look,
who knows? Anthony, you and I very well know that one GM's confidence is another GM's arrogance.
Yeah, and one of these things I hate, and especially this close to the draft, is how negative stuff like that could potentially hurt a young man's the perception of one of these young men who are, they're about to live their dream, they're about to be professional football players, and then stuff like this come out. And sometimes you don't know if a GM is doing that to see if a stock of a player causing them to fall down to them, actually. I mean, I remember in 1998, Randy Moss had that bad behavior off the field perception, and then you had so many teams that needed a wide receiver. The Cowboys, named more specifically, passed on him, and he landed right into the hands of the Minnesota Vikings, who were just coming off a playoff appearance and was picking late in that first round. And the story kind of wrote itself, and we saw what kind of career Randy Moss had. So those are things that could backfire on a potential team if they're the ones that put that out there. But with Shedeur Sanders, you obviously know with Shedeur, you're getting Dion as well by extension, and it's gonna be. And you gotta understand, Dion's a very outspoken guy. It's always been like that.
We got to trade.
Wow. Let's talk about the trade in a second, but let's quickly go into the first pick. And Jay, the Tennessee Titans, after 3-14 year last year, they picked Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami. Do you like the pick? Do you understand the pick? And do you think this has been a pretty obviously picked? By the way, that trade is to Jacksonville. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, you know me. I mean, being an old quarterback myself, I tend to do my deepest dive on this position. So while I look at everybody's scouting reports, strengths, weaknesses, what really stands out to me when I get into is the film study, and I like this pick. Ward's a guy who came from a wing T offense in high school. He improved every season he was in college. He has a very innate awareness of everything happening on the football field, and that's hard to teach. He finds open receivers who seem to be out of his line of sight, who shouldn't technically be open against certain coverages. He's not an elite athlete, but he consistently finds ways to get by pass rushers, by time for throws or scramble for first downs. He has really good arm talent, and he pairs that with the ability to make every throw from either on or off platform. The big negative with him is that he tries to make the big play a little too often, which can lead to too many negative plays. He has to be more willing to take the checkdowns and easy completions in the NFL. Tends to be too reactive to pressure, drifting or breaking the pocket at times. What makes him special is how he applies that awareness and creativity to plays within the structure of the offense, within the pocket. You guys know a big thing is you got to be able to play within the pocket in the NFL. From a clean pocket, on dropbacks, not including scrambles, his EPA per dropback ranked 7th nationally last year. Ability to scramble, big part of his game, but he's just as productive as a passer. There are things he needs to clean up, but there's a lot of evidence that he performs well playing within structure and potential to be even better. His understanding of coverages, allowed him to protect his receivers despite throwing into tight windows, which he's not afraid to do. Big plays outside of structure, they're pretty spectacular. But his ability to do that from within the pocket could make him special. How he looks for big plays is actually closer to the process of some of the best quarterbacks in the league rather than just recklessly chucking deep. Has 5 seasons in college, a lot of experience that shows up in his work at the line of scrimmage, especially in Miami's system where he played just 1 year. Plays where the offense looks to the sideline for checks, but Ward has a tendency to sniff out blitzes, adjust protections, and make changes to route concepts at the line of scrimmage. That's not something you easily acquire. One of his favorite concepts is 4 verticals, something that's run a lot in the NFL. So he already comes in understanding how to do that. Stands out. Guy is really good about making throws to the intermediate and deep middle sections of the field. His ability to throw dig, seam, bender, and post routes, even in tight windows, is where he's going to make his money. 74% of his completions in 11 to 20-yard range, 71.4% down the deep middle. Willingness to make those throws mirrors what you see from some of the best passers. He has really good accuracy on tight windows. The kind of the benchmark is 50% in tight windows. He was 48.4, but when you think about it, you want some comparison. Caleb Williams, 47%. Drake May, 46% last year, and those guys are coming out of college. What I like about him is that if you look at him under pressure, 54% of his passes completed under pressure. Dig a little deeper, 15 of his misses, throwaways, all of them outside of the pocket. If you look at only his dropbacks under pressure, which stayed in the pocket, which is something that'll happen more in the NFL, accuracy rate, 70%. The biggest red flag for me was that he completed just 39% of his passes in the red zone per Pro Football Focus. What stood out when I was looking at his film and his pass charting, the difference between his accuracy in zone versus man, it's the exception, not the rule. Most quarterbacks are better the other way. He's the exception. But his man coverage numbers are really good. His zone coverage numbers are a little concerning. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why that would be the case. His play style might have something to do with it. That propensity to hunt big plays to a fault, often ignoring the underneath or checkdowns against zones. Caleb Williams dealt with the same issue last year with the Bears, and we saw what it did to him at times as a rookie. Ward is deserving of being the top quarterback in this draft, but he will, like Williams, have to rein in that tendency to always go for the home run, which he will not be able to get away with as often in the NFL as he did at Miami. But if he can do that, tighten up his footwork a little bit, he's got the potential to be a very solid #1 quarterback in this league for a long time.
And I think one of the things that's interesting about Cam Ward is the fact that the Titans kind of really, really ended up wanting him after one of the last workouts that he did for them. And picking a quarterback so early on and in Will Levis now, and now basically saying, yeah, we've kind of punted on that and is going with like a new hot trend. But I think Ward at least can be a little bit better with the ball than Will Levis was in his last few years. I think Cam Ward really does show a lot of promise out there. But again, now you're going back. You're turning back the clock into another project. But you do have a division in the AFC South that's worth the taking, guys. You have to agree.
Yeah, yes. Rabbi, but I think in this sense, Ward is less of a project and closer to being he's a much surer thing and less of a developmental situation, less red flags than Levis had when he was coming out of college. So granted, you hate to punt on a first round pick only about 2 years in. But, you know, when you have the opportunity to improve at the most important position in the game, you take it. And, you know, you just take it. You have.
You say thank you, and you
Yeah,
basically
you got to understand
say
this.
that. Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was say this. You think about this, the Titans too. They look to kind of protect the quarterback and Cam Ward. Look, the thing about Ward is that we know he can make the big throws. It's going to be interesting to see just how quickly he can read disguise coverages, particularly when it comes to the sky with zone blitzes. He's going to see a lot of exotic things he did not see at any point in the ACC or any point in his college collegiate career. It's going to be really interesting to see how quickly he can pack that up, and if he can kind of control himself and take what the defense give him. Like, can he take the short underneath stuff and just kind of keep the chains moving instead of going for the home run throw? Look, we know he's got a big arm. He can make those throws. He can throw it in the tight coverages. It's going to be a matter of, can you take the gunslinger mentality down from a 9 to a 6 when the defense start to dictate what you're going to do offensively, and when you and how you can translate into moving the ball downfield, even if you have to dink and dunk your way down the field. We see quarterbacks do that all the time. But then also another thing is too just how much the Titans offense is going to be available to him. Sometimes when you're a quarterback come out of college, you get the bare bone minimum, and then sometimes you get the entire 500, 550, 600 page playbook. So those are going to be.
Yep. He's definitely gonna see more too high shells than he ever saw. At my, you know, playing in college. So we'll see how he adapts and adjusts to that.
And also
All
another
right.
thing too is how he adapts to cover two, because he has a big arm. When he's missing, he's gonna miss high. And when you play cover two and there's always a safety back there, you gotta be very much pinpoint accuracy when you're
Yep.
trying to get guys in these soft coverages.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Jesus Christ, well, the fact that we're mentioning the Jacksonville Jaguars because they traded with the Cleveland Browns. Here is what that pick was, essentially. Here was what that trade was. Cleveland receiving for this pick. Obviously, they swap picks at number 5. A second round pick from this year, a fourth round pick from this year, and next year's first round pick. Apparently, they didn't read the how much is this actually worth guide. And then 2025, they get a fourth and a sixth round pick. And they ended up picking Travis Hunter, quarterback, wide receiver, floor sweeper, mopper, and everything that Jacksonville is going to want in a player. Liam Cohen, their new head coach, wanted an offensive weapon. They swung for the fences, and they gave up a lot of crap just to get him at 2, thinking that other teams would have
Can I
possibly
say?
passed him. I have a feel like the Giants would definitely want to have gone a little bit ahead of them in this situation. So let's talk about Travis Hunter for a second. Now, you saw what he did last year, winning the Heisman. He is one of the better 2-way players that we've ever seen come out of college. In fact, he's basically the only real true modern day player to come out of college. Commonly, I guess, one of the best players in this draft. He could be the best wide receiver and the best quarterback in this draft. Who knows? But the question is, he has said basically, you're going to play me 2 ways or you're not going to play me at all. And that's 2,000 snaps that you're taking in a 17-game season. That is a lot. Among the best in both spots. Very quick feet. And he's pretty much in phase with almost all the receivers possibly. He can go from the back pedal to breaking on the ball easily. Now, one of his best weapons out there, and I feel like they're using him a lot more for his wide receiver skills because Trevor Lawrence is going to be in year number 5, I believe, in this system. And they need to get some results very quickly. I mean, basically lost the division 2 years ago on the last day, made the playoffs. Lawrence got his first win the year before that. So he locates the ball tremendously, tracks it down the field, makes adjustments when you need to, extends to pluck the ball in the air. He has athleticism, getting yards after the catch, whatever you need him to do. His quickness and agility makes him a true major threat out there. And one of the things that you could also do is you could get him a screen pass and he can go the whole way. Pretty simple. Also, he can create turnovers. Weaker player in a bunch of different things. He's only 6'1", 185. And if his frame is maxed out, that's not going to be a great person to actually have as somebody who is going to play possibly more snaps than you would in any other position. There are, in fact, instances where he's going to have bigger and more powerful opponents, and that's not great. And is not a slow player, but there's going to be instances where he doesn't necessarily follow through with the run, and many of his big plays on offense also involve his quickness and agility to create separation as opposed to outrunning defenders with raw speed. Now, Joe, I want to throw it to you since we haven't heard from you yet. Hunter is a big time prospect on this draft board. Would have been a good fit with too many teams. Why would you go up just these 3 picks and give up possibly a big pick next year to get somebody who is just a piece to a bigger puzzle?
Well, again, in Jacksonville, I think they feel like they're closer than maybe they really are because of their quarterback and some other things they do, and they need to get him some weapons. This is the best athlete in the draft. So forgetting about, if you're going to pick the best athlete in the draft, this is the guy. It wasn't Cam Ward by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't anybody else. So if you're going to just stay true to your thought process, this is the guy that you wanted. I agree with you. I think you give up too much to move up 4 spots because, you could have almost done this trade after they picked him and then after Cleveland picked him and then figured it out later on. I don't think you needed to give up as much as they did. But I think they feel like, again, they need a home run hitter. They need a little bit of sizzle down there. They need a little bit of this. But again, I have no problem with that kind of pick because he is the best athlete on the board. So why not go up and get him? Because your team needs to build in that way. They need a lot of help in Jacksonville. Again, I think they think they're closer than they are. I'm not sure Trevor Lawrence is as great as everyone thinks he is at certain times. But again, this is a huge help. And again, you're going to put him in the slot. You're going to put him out wide. You're going to have him run reverses. You're going to have him run screen passes. You're going to do a lot of different things. Plus, he's excellent playing defense. And as somebody said, it seems to be easier in the NFL to play both ways because there's a lot more time between snaps. Whereas in college, everything's go, 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 go. He actually may play less time-wise than he did in college. So we'll see how that works out.
2 things before we get to the Giants pick that I thought interesting. Number one, this is only in a trade that, by the way, in a draft that had no trades. I think it's the first time in the modern era before today in the first round, we get only the 3rd time in the history of the draft that we had a trade between 2 top 5 teams. Also, in the fun fact too, Deion Sanders is the last person, I think it was over 30 years, almost 30 years ago now, to start 8 games on offense and 8 games on defense. So going to be very interesting. We move on to the last of the 3 and 14 triplets from 2025, and that is the New York Giants. And the G-Men took Brian Daboll's rookie season in 2022, 9 wins. They've combined for that in 23 and 24. No matter how you look at it, and I'm looking at those people that wanted them to tank against Indianapolis to get the number 1 pick, but they find their highest pick in the draft in a while. And Joe, let's react to the 3rd pick for Big Blue. That is the edge rusher from Penn State known as Abdul Carter. It was going to be Carter or Hunter, and a lot of people thought that decision was going to be made for them. And it was. Can't go wrong here, Joe.
No, and exactly what we said, right? All along, I think, again, even in my little text to Jay, I said, one or the other. I don't really care. I think, again, it comes down to best athlete on the board. 23 sacks, 39 and a half tackles for loss in his career. Unbelievable thought process. And again, the Giants are still in that realm of you do 2 things well, right? You rush the passer and you run the ball. And that's what they're going to try to do. So offensive line is going to come next. We try to get a quarterback. Obviously, we've all been talking about that, but this is the no-brainer pick of the draft. And it's, you weren't going to move up and get somebody else. This is perfect for what they want to do. Again, coming from that line out of Penn State, if they're showing up now, LeVar Arrington, Navarro Bowman, Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter, he obviously makes that defense a lot better. and they've been struggling for the last couple of years. They've been bringing in, they brought in a new coordinator last year and started out okay, but didn't really take hold. And if you have a Dexter Lawrence up there, you want to make the most of it. So now you have a Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter. You're building pretty strong up front, and that's where they need to be. So good pick. Happy with it. Makes sense. So.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, I agree with you 100%. Rabbi, I think I told you when we were putting this together that I don't think the Giants could have gone wrong with whoever fell to them at number 3. You knew it was either going to be Hunter or Carter. I was secretly hoping it would be Hunter because I think he gives them a guy who fits in at 2 positions, of need, cornerback and wide receiver. But I mean, as Joe said, you got to be able to rush the passer. And in the NFL, you can't have too many pass rushers. The thing that is interesting about it is that this kind of gives them some cushion, especially if they elect to not pick up Thibodeau's 5th-year option. I like this guy. Number 1 in the nation last year in tackles for losses, 23.5. Number 2 in pressures, 66. Number 7 in sacks, 12.5. This is a guy who he started as an off-ball linebacker before transitioning to, down lineman and, rusher that way. He can play either. I think this is a guy who has that special combination of burst of speed, athletic talent, and technique. So I don't know you can kind of go wrong here. And this is a guy who just loves to wreck offensive game plans. I think the Parsons comps are hopefully will eventually be spot on, but I understand why people are making those comps early. Yeah, 100%. Shane nailed it with this.
Again, it must be great, Anthony, when you have pretty much, again, a decision essentially made for you in this spot. And I wouldn't say it's low risk. It's obviously big to get a number 3 pick out there. But again, it's a position that you can't really go wrong with. And when you're picking at this spot in what is probably a 2-athlete draft, here's the second athlete, you go get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Williams, it's kind of hard to call a guy who's Big Ten defensive player in there. We saw him in the college football playoff last year. This past season, we talked about it on the show as well. It's a game disruptor, and this is something that the Giants, I think, really need. I mean, look, defensive line was not a need, but you could never have too many pass rushers. And you think about you're going to get Dexter Lawrence back. You still have Thibodeau. Going into the season, you have you have Burns as well, and now you got Williams. So now it's like, okay, it gives me flashbacks to when the Giants were at their best. We talked about, and obviously Joe talked about that 2011 Giant team, even 2017 when they had all these pass rushers and could just constantly attack the quarterback at will. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Think about this. That defensive backfield is still kind of a question mark. So it's like you want to help get your young defensive backs in the backfield. You don't want to leave them on an island. You got to have guys who can win one-on-one at the line of scrimmage and get to the quarterback. And far too often, particularly the last 2 seasons, we saw the Giants not being able to get pressure on the quarterback and not be able to take the ball away a lot more. I think Williams coming in can really help out in both instances. And the fact that the Giants struggle stopping the run too in the last 2 seasons, that is something that Williams can also help out as well with his athleticism and speed to go from sideline to sideline, and especially on those stretch runs, to be able to kind of close the gap and kind of stretch out the plane to where pursuing help can follow low and make a tackle. So this is a pick I absolutely like. I had my nervousness before this week about the Giants taking a quarterback this high. I think outside of Cam Ward, the quarterback situation could come later on in this draft for the Giants. But Williams is not just the best athlete that was available when the Giants picked. He's by far the best edge rusher in this year's draft. You got to get him. And I think this is a great pick for the Giants.
Yeah, the The only thing I'm interested to see that he probably will have to do a little more work on at the NFL level. Didn't have to worry about it as much as Penn State is how he will adjust to setting the edge on the run, because we know that you have to do that a little bit differently in the NFL than you do on college because of the higher complexity of run games in the NFL.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a little like as playing run defense is a little different out there. He needs to stack and shed blocks but again, you're on a pretty strong line. I mean, yes, they didn't get to there were points last season where they didn't get to the quarterback, but you need to be able to shoot gaps, need a little bit of aggressiveness. But again, you're overthinking it a little bit. You have somebody who had a 19.6% pressure rate last year and a 35.1% pass rush win rate. You're kind of grasping at straws a little bit when you're talking about one of the better players in this entire draft. He can be a little bit of a read and react defender. He is instinctive. He has qualities. And by the way, edge rusher is not a position that's weak this year. It's probably the strongest it's been in quite some time. There's not a lot of spots in this year's draft that I would consider weak or without depth. This is one that has a ton of depth. And I think this is going to be a very, very interesting way to bring him in. Now, of course, you do eventually want to see the Giants upgrade in a bunch of offensive positions, but you have the running back, and the only offensive player who I think is even worthy of anything close to the top five is the kid from Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, and that wasn't going to happen in this spot, guys. Don't you agree? All right.
Yeah. I mean, Rabbi, if you're a defensive line coach in the NFL this year, you are licking your chops at the possibilities of what your GM could give you coming out of this draft.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of just interesting storylines coming out of what needs to be done this year when it comes to the Giants on offense and defense. We'll talk about them more in a second, but let's get to the Patriots, who picked at number 4. And this is actually the first team that is coming in with a new head coach. Believe it or not, the top 3 head coaches of the top 3 teams, and actually, well, now obviously the Jaguars pitch, but the original top 3 teams, all of them had the same coaches. This one is the Patriots, and they have a new head coach by the name of Jerod Mayo. This is the team that will see Mike Vrabel start his dream job in New England. And the first pick for them, ironically enough, since it's Vrabel, it has to be an offensive lineman. Of course it does. It's Will Campbell, offensive lineman from LSU. Anthony, can't have enough big boys on this team. The 4th pick was really the first one where we were thinking, what's going on? Who's going to be there? And got a good one over here. Again, not a lot of things going wrong. Top offensive lineman in this draft, pretty much consensus.
Well, so when you see Mike Vrabel when he coached in Tennessee, and when he had Derrick Henry to kind of hand the ball off to, he wants to play smash mouth football. Look, the Patriots' game plan going into the draft was always going to be, how can we protect Drake May? They were 31st in pass blocking, and according to Pro Football Focus, one of the worst offensive lines in football, which is saying a lot when you talk about the Giants and the Jets could give them a run for their money. But with Will Campbell, big, powerful drive blocker, a guy who is at 319 pounds with a sub 5 second 40-yard dash, a guy who's 300 pounds and can run under 5 seconds in a 40 is a freak of nature just on that alone. But you think about this, he won the starting job at LSU, never gave it up, started every game last season, for the last 2 years. He's a guy that can definitely protect Drake May at the very least. And for this draft for the New England Patriots, it's about building around the future quarterback. And with Mike Vrabel, I can see him trying to build the way his old head coach and Bill Belichick built the New England Patriots up. Those earlier Super Bowl teams with Tom Brady, where there were a smash mouth defensive team that took their opportunities offensively. I think he's trying to build the Patriots up and that mentality as well, But the game plan here was always going to be rebuilding that the interior offensive line, and Campbell's a great pick. But at number 4, it's pretty much a no-brainer if you're the New England Patriots when you consider what you have to do to rebuild offensive line that was ranked 31st in the league, and a pass block rate of just above 50%. So that is definitely not good numbers if you're trying to keep your young quarterback right side up.
Wait
Yeah,
a minute.
Anthony,
Oh, go ahead.
the thing that's still, you talk about, pass protection, and he played in a very pass happy inside outside zone scheme at LSU. This is a guy who took starting reps at left tackle his first day of training camp as a freshman, started 38 straight games, allowed only 1 sack over his final 30 games with the Tigers, over 1,500 career snaps, 4 sacks. I don't think it doesn't, there's that right there says blindside protector, NFL level. That's literally what you're looking for from a guy coming out of college, and you're projecting him as a left tackle in the NFL these days.
It's funny because I was actually hearing about this, and I was hearing if you have somebody in the top 5 who is an offensive lineman, he's a left tackle. He has to be your left tackle. Can't pick anyone that high to play other positions in the line. He has to eventually end up being your left tackle. And can't go wrong with what you got right over there. Again, there have been some pretty easy picks, even easy enough for GMs not to screw up. And it's hard, and it's not hard for GMs to screw up sometimes. But again, got to get that blind side protected, and I think Will Campbell should be able to do that for Drake May.
Unless you're the Vikings and you let the clock run out not once but twice.
It's a long time. That was a long time ago. That was a long time ago, and that's hard when you pick at 7 or 8. Okay, let's go back to the Giants. When you have the number 3 pick in the draft, spoiler alert, you probably need a little bit more. So here's what's on the Giants' plate pick-wise at this moment. 34th pick in round 2, 65th and 99th in round 3, 105 in round 4, pick 154 in round 5, and pick 219 and 246 in round 7. If you're still with me, wake up and let me give you their needs. Quarterback, O-line, D-line, linebacker, wide receiver, and better air traffic control so no one can fly a nasty message this season over MetLife. Guys, give me the pick, starting with you, Joe, that you have for the G-men later in this draft. We know how much you love picking random people. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. So cross off defensive lineman as a need because you took care of it already. I think you go offensive line. Again, I'm not picking names. You pick offensive line is where they need to go. And then you need to pick some athletic guys for the backside, for cornerbacks, for safeties, because you're going to need to get a little bit more competition at safety, even though they signed the kid out of Miami. But I still think you need to have some depth back there. And again, I would go offensive line and then back of the defense is where I would go for my picks going forward as far as positions go. And of course, again, we're going to throw in, it depends on who's there. Jay knows what I'm thinking. Somewhere I'll jump back on later on and go, hey, look, jump up and pick somebody. But, and again, it may happen, it may not. I'm interested to see that. Again, Cleveland figured out that they could go backwards and nobody was going to take this defensive tackle. These are the brilliant things that happen in the NFL with these trades. Sometimes it's really smart, and you go, nobody was picking this guy ahead of you if you move back to number 5. And you got 2 extra draft picks and an extra one next year, extra first round next year for moving back to a guy that you really didn't want to have a place for. And this is a better way to build your team, gives you a little bit extra in the middle of that defense because you got the edges covered, and may turn out to be a really, really good move. Again, down the road, 2 years from now, when you look back at all the draft picks that they got, this might be one of those brilliant moves where you go, yeah, this guy was special, and we weren't ready to have the other guy. He wasn't going to help us that much. Having a Travis Hunter at this point doesn't do them a lot of good except sell some tickets. This really, really works well for them.
And what's funny is the fact that what I was saying before, what we were saying before the opening, Jacksonville, they feel like they can take a luxury pick, but sometimes you can't take a luxury pick when you're in that spot. But eventually, somebody's got to take the cars off of the floor. Now, Jay, I want to mention
Right.
one thing before we get into your pick, and I kind of wanted to throw a little bit in here. And it kind of relates back to all the way back when the Giants picked Daniel Jones at number 6, because I kind of want to bring into this word. If you like somebody at 12 or 13, what's the point of waiting and just taking them at number 6? I think that's something that people have to kind of look into when you kind of go through this draft.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that kind of goes back to what Joe says, is like you have to have an understanding that the guy you want is going to be available to you if you trade back.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the
In this
that has
case,
to
it
be made.
was.
Right, exactly. And as somebody who watched Mason Graham play his entire career at Michigan, this is a terrific pick for Cleveland. Um, so, which kind of leads into my pick in terms of like you don't necessarily have to go, reach. Look, we all know that the Giants don't need to like go crazy and blow up their draft capital to take a quarterback in this draft because they have 2 veterans on the roster, which should cover them for at least next year, if not the year after. So if you want to grab a guy who is closer to being ready right now, but you don't necessarily need to start him right now, I'm looking at Tyler Shuff. And the fact that he's rising on folks' draft board as we've gotten closer and closer today isn't surprising to me. I like most of what I saw of his film, showed plenty of high-level quarterback traits. Rotational thrower, quick release, doesn't need a lot of space in front of him to throw with accuracy and velocity. Good athlete, can get away from the pass rush and make plays outside of structure. A lot of injuries in his career. The guy is a walking, MASH patient. And he's going to be 20 because of that. He's going to be 26 years old as a rookie. Both of those things have given some teams pause when evaluating him, as does the fact that his level of play tends to drop considerably when he's under pressure. 4 of his 6 picks last season were due to him being under pressure. But he does do a good job of identifying blitzes and coverage rotations and executing against them. Of all of the top quarterbacks prospects in this draft, Shuff more than any of them was hurt by dropped passes. His 0.26 EPA per drop back against the blitz was good, ranked right below Cam Ward, but it would have been better if not for several drops by his receivers. Louisville's offense featured a lot of slot shot concepts where Shuff would have to roll in the opposite direction of the intended route. Plays like that require long distance throws, and he does it, and he routinely hit them, and they're not easy to make. He also threw fade balls with a variety of trajectories and hit his receivers in stride, skills very much required at the NFL level. I talked about his reaction to pressure. When he can see it coming and has time to react, he does so very well. According to Pro Football Focus, his pressure to sack rate of 9.3 is very high. It's elite level. But when he is under pressure, he ranked 49th in EPA per dropback at 0.22. A reason for that is his tendency to try and get rid of the ball at all costs to avoid a sack. And when he doesn't have that aforementioned time and space to react to said pressure, leads to completely avoidable interceptions or fumbles when he gets hit. This is his biggest on-field red flag and one that might ultimately cap his ceiling at a lower level than some of the other quarterback prospects in this draft. When he does have a clean pocket, Shuff ranked 12th in EPA per dropback, 0.48. Stats from a clean pocket are considered a stable metric. Does tend to translate to the NFL level, but how that quarterback prospect handles the smaller sample of plays available to him when he's under pressure will dictate their ceiling. Shuff has the potential to be an average to above average quarterback, which a team like the Giants could use immediately. The comp I've come across when researching him is Derek Carr. Smart quarterback, quick release, above average arm, talent, inconsistent play under pressure. All that being said, if you watch Shuff's tape, he has some first round type ability. Has the quick release, has the strong arm, throws a beautiful deep ball, can zip passes into tight windows with velocity. Despite his age and only having had 1 full season as a starter, he reads defenses and coverages at a high level. In the right situation in terms of offensive scheme, and you guys have heard me say this for years, it is all about the fit quarterback to system. And coaching, that along with coaching staff, I believe that Shuff can start sooner for the team that drafts him, which would appeal to teams that don't have the time to deal with the growing pains of the younger quarterbacks in this draft, like Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe. And remember, Shane and Dable are pretty much on the hot seat this season, so they do not have all the time in the world.
Yeah, Jay, the only thing I was going to throw in there was the only thing that made me think twice about, this, if they do this, or they move up or they stay where they are and get a quarterback, was we also know how close Daboll and Saban were.
Right.
And they've been talking to Milroe a lot lately.
Right.
And again, they think, they're on the hot seat, but they think they got 2 years. They think they bought themselves 2 years with getting two veteran quarterbacks that he can learn behind and learn to be that next guy. So that's the only one that kind of creeped in my head today, that if they wait all the way to 32 or 34, whatever number it is, to get the quarterback, it might be somebody like that as well.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the thing. And a lot of people have mocked Milroe to the Giants in the second round. And I understand the linkages that has people going that route. The way I see quarterbacks, in terms of what I think works best in the NFL, is this guy. And that's why he's my pick for the Giants here. And I believe they should be able to get him without having to trade back into the first round to do so.
And that's the key to our whole conversation, right? Is if it's 34, it's a different conversation than if it's 19.
32. Yeah, or 19 and 20. Yeah, agreed. So I do think the Giants take a quarterback somewhere day 2.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be very telling to see what skill set that quarterback has. Is it a guy like Schuff, who's more prototypical NFL passer, or is it a guy like Milroe, who leans more towards the Michael Vick, Jaden.
Yeah, no, that's the comp for sure is Michael Vick, and and like you said, I think it all depends on if it's 34 or I guess we're going in front of Pittsburgh, right? So 34 or 20 is really what makes that
18. I know I thought it was 18 for some reason, but it is 20. You're right. Anthony, let's hear you think the Giants should grab in the later rounds.
I'm kind of going to go outside the box here. And I would love to, I would love to see the Giants add Cam Scatterbo, the running back out of Arizona State.
That would
be. Yeah, you know what it is? It's because, look, I think the Giants got a great pick, a great running back in Tyrone Tracy out of the 5th round last year. And he was impressive for the Giants, considering the guy he was replacing and the hoopla behind that. And a guy who ran for 1,000 yards as well. But I don't think he's at that point where he's a workhorse back and a guy who could carry the ball 25, 30 times a game. Not yet. But Scatterbo, whenever I watch Cam Scatterbo, and I talked about him, obviously when we covered the college football playoff with Arizona State, he gives me a lot of vibes as far as watching Mike Allstott or Peyton Hillis, this big husky back who has sprinter speed, who can run block, who can be a runner, and can be a receiver out in the backfield. That's somebody I was thinking about, and you think about the game he had against Texas in the Peach Bowl. 143 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 99 yards receiving out in the backfield, and a 42-yard touchdown pass, and almost helping Arizona get cover behind in that game. I just look at how he'll be a great change of pace back and a guy who can pound the rock in between the tackles, or at least help as far as short yardage situations. And that was somebody, and that's what I think about with those old Tampa Bay Buccaneer teams, where you had Ward Dunn, the home run running back, and a guy who can spread out as a receiver in that slot. Against a nickel in a mismatch, and then go to the Mike Allstott, who can just pound the rock and when the Thunder Lightning tangent, Tiki Barber and Ron Dane, or even Earth, Wind and Fire, or at least the Earth the Earth and Wind part when you had Warren and Jacobs. But that is something. But I would love to see the Giants really try to give themselves make themselves a little more dynamic offensively. And the fact that if Russell Wilson is a starter, for example, Wilson works so much better out of the play action. And we see that in Seattle pretty much at the height of his career. The play action pass, slinging it downfield to a Golden Tate, or even DK Metcalf later on when he was with the Seahawks. And I feel like if the Giants have more have more of a dynamic offense as far as the backfield, I think that would definitely help um, Wilson out or Winston, whoever's starting the quarterback. But Scottaboo is somebody I would really pay attention to, maybe in the late second, maybe round 3, more than anything, if he's still on the board. If I was Joe Shane, I would definitely take a second look at him if he's still on the board.
By the way, I just wanted to mention, just came in. Joe Shade has actually said they will pick up Kayvon Thibodeau's 5th-year option.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's something that they just mentioned now. So that's to go in. All right. So
Really interesting.
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of again, position that you would really like to have a dearth of. So Joe mentioned offensive line, and I'm gonna help my cohort out and mention a player that is on the offensive line. And unfortunately, in the name of Eric Flowers, I'm going to pick an offensive lineman from Miami. And that's going to be Jalen Rivers, offensive lineman for the Hurricanes. Sufficient starter at the NFL level, it seems like. Seems to be a third, fourth round pick. He is a between the tackles, downhill oriented run scheme player. His dense build and power. He has experience in tackle. You want him in tighter spaces, but if you need it in a pinch, you can get it, and that usually happens a lot in that situation. Has very good density, has very good reach, can turn the corner. Rivers has a very decorated career. He was the number 35 prospect coming out in 2022. Had a switch to left tackle where he started all 13 games in 2023. He has always been a contributor to the Hurricanes in his spot. Now, weaknesses, subpar athleticism, limited range, hand placement seems to be erratic, which is something so quick. I got this right out of there. Sorry about that. So
we already started to jump into the Jets pick. So you want to take us there?
How the hell did you start? Did you let me finish my Jalen?
You froze. We didn't know how long you'd be offline.
Well, yeah. So, like I said,
then
Jalen
he
Rivers,
just froze again.
Did I really? Jesus Christ! All right, I'm going to move in this second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me talk quickly about the Jets. They picked Armand Membu from Missouri, pick number 7 in this draft. Joe, right pick, wrong pick for the Jets. It's a pretty safe pick, though, too.
Yeah, it makes sense. You could have used this pick a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean they know what they need. I think now that the new regime's there, they figured it out. These guys are a little bit more football savvy. You got to get an offensive line. You had nothing for the last couple of years, and the guy that you thought was going to be great winds up leaving your team and going to be great somewhere else. So now that they got a new coaching staff and everybody else makes a little bit more sense. Still not quite sure about if they got the right quarterback or if they have one, but you do need to have an offensive line on that team. You have very good running back. You have very good wide receiver. Your defense isn't terrible. You can stop picking defensive linemen for the next couple of years and concentrate on getting some offensive linemen. And I think they did a good job here. This guy seems to be the top guy, one of the top 5 guys at that position. So I guess he plays right tackle, not left tackle, but we can work on that.
Well,
work on that a lot, but I do think that there is a lot of good pick. This is a pretty simple one too.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to skip over anybody. Yeah, I think about Aaron Glenn and how he built his defenses in Houston and pretty much inside out. He wants to do that with the Jets. He wants to establish a culture of tough-minded football. And you think about, and with the Jets, look, the offensive line was a mess for the last couple of years. I mean, this is a pick they could have, like you said, Joe. This is a pick they could have used 3 seasons ago. When you consider the offensive line issues they have had. Last year they selected Olu Fashanu to be on the left side, so this pretty much shows up that other side of the offensive line. And look, I watched Membu's his 40-yard dash. It was so funny that by the time he got to the last 10 yards. He just let out this primal yell, which is kind of hilarious. But I'm like, you know what? If this guy has this kind of fire and he's running on 40, I can imagine how he's gonna react the first time he gets a pancake added to a stack total. This upcoming season. But yes, I mean the Jets, they have weapons on the outside and the backfield. They have to start rebuilding that O line. And also with Justin Fields as well. I mean, Justin Fields is an athletic quarterback who can keep players open, but even you need to keep him right side up at some point. But the offensive line for the Jets was going to be the main focus. It's a safe pick, but it's a no-brainer pick when you realize it was one of the biggest weaknesses on your team the last few seasons. And I know Aaron Rodgers is somewhere thinking to himself, well, gee, I wish this team did this to me the last few years. But
wouldn't mattered anyway, just because of the lack of his mobility, though.
which is even more reason why you need a good offensive line. When you have a statue in the backfield playing quarterback, you really have to get guys who can block. But in this case, what Member was good at as well, more than anything, is run blocking. You have an explosive back in Breece Hall in the backfield that is going to really love the idea of running behind a tackle or a guard who can pull from the other end, from one end to the other side, and be able to open up a gaping hole and let his speed do the rest of the dirty work. So this is a safe pick, but look, this is a pick for the Jets. You got to fix that offensive line. You can't go into another season with your offensive line being a New York City turnstile. That's for sure.
I feel like, though, it seems like it'll always end up being a city turnstile because, again, you can never predict what this offensive line could do. Same with the Giants' offensive line. It seems to be the weak spot at both times, in both teams, which is why we've talked about them a lot. Jay, when we were talking about this draft, we were looking at like a lot of people are having Armand Membu at number 7. We were looking at better options. I know people were thinking Tyler Warren, but again, this just seems like the logical solution and the logical pick here.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been doing this show together, the four of us, for years, and you, me, and Anthony even longer than we've been, doing it with Joe. So it's a rare, and we all come at it through very different perspectives, based on our own experiences and what, how we figure a team should get built. So it's telling when all of us basically kind of have this guy, or bare minimum this position, as the pick here. And I honestly don't think I think it's kind of a no-brainer pick. I have always been of the opinion that whoever you have playing under center, you don't start with putting guys, giving him weapons. You want to give him weapons, on the outside, in the backfield, behind him. And I understand the reason people were thinking they would get him a pass-catching tight end. It's a quarterback's number one safety net. Especially Fields, the way he kind of had a connection with Cole Kmet in Chicago, the way he utilized Freiermuth when he was playing in Pittsburgh. But I think here, a guy who, long arms, solid in pass pro, knows how to, use the right hand stab before we work in his hand to control. He bends, he redirects, does a good job of staying square throughout, the situation when he's playing against a pass rusher. He needs to improve a little bit on the run game, in terms of ability to displace defensive tackles who he could have to deal with. But he definitely has some pancake ability. Might potentially move inside, but I mean either way, this is a safe, obvious, no-brainer, pick. And when you're looking to protect your quarterback, have the ability to open holes for a guy like Breece Hall who can be dynamic once he gets to the second level, and you want to give your quarterback time to be able to get the ball out to your former college teammate and favorite, pass target. This is a great pick. It may be Captain Obvious and it may be safe, but it's also a really good pick here.
But Jay, they haven't done the obvious smart. This is the position. This is the obvious thing for a couple of years in the past.
I know. Maybe they're finally getting it right, Joe.
It's refreshing, right, to say them go, hey, they actually did the right thing for a change.
Yeah, I mean, is it pleasantly surprising? Yes, but you know what? Sometimes. So, and I guess the only question I would have in it is, did they make this pick while Woody Johnson was going to the bathroom? Because it's not a splash pick. It's not a, back page tabloid winning headline pick. So was Woody in the men's room when they made this pick?
But I think,
Actually,
the one thing that maybe he's realized a little bit is, hey, I made that change, right? In the middle of last year, the beginning of last year, not even in the middle, in the beginning of last year, and then I kind of cut the legs out of my GM, so now I got these two new guys. Maybe I see at least what they can think and do for a little while, right? That like
Hmm.
not go crazy and figure it out on your own. Maybe now that these guys are new, he's going to give them a little bit more leeway. And they may have gone to him and said, hey, this is our plan. Please let us do it. Because, Aaron Glenn's not exactly shy, right?
oh, no, not at
He's not a
all.
quiet guy. From what we heard about the Aaron Rodgers meeting, he's pretty straight to the point and knows what he wants to do. And he might have just said, hey, if you're hiring me, this is what we're doing. And this is the plan. And please leave us alone for a little while and let me prove it to you. And, he might have liked that in a way instead of everybody just kissing his ass.
So, actually, I do have some insider sources, Jay. Turns out that Woody Johnson didn't like Ted McMillan's Madden rating in future things, so that's the
Exactly.
reason why he went one spot later.
Wow.
Uh,
Right,
with
and tight end's not sexy enough for Woody Johnson to sign off on as an.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely not. With all apologies to Jay, who is trying to do his Michael Jordan flu game tonight, playing a little under the weather.
A little
I'm
bit.
going to piss him off a little bit more when it comes to measurables because, as you
Lay
said,
it
you
on
saw a
me.
guy. Yeah, you see a guy who started all 13 games at right tackle. This is in Membu. You had five with him. You had an offense in Missouri, by the way, a team that wasn't really synonymous with SEC dominance, surpassing 500 total yards in five contests, 200 yards rushing. But his junior season in 2024, he had second team All
Wow.
SEC, and his remarkable athleticism for his size caught the attention of Bruce Feldman, who works for Fox right now, who featured him on his annual Freaks list for posting
Yep.
eye-popping numbers in the weight room and during testing. 18% body fat, 320 pounds, 32-inch vertical jump, 600-pound squat. You can't teach that. Does it mean anything for the NFL? Absolutely not. But I did want to mention those measurables out there. Joe, you have the option to get out of here if you want as we go into the next portion of the
Yeah,
stuff. I
no,
know you wanted to.
I was just looking at, and again, maybe it's me, being happy that people have brains all of a sudden.
Mhm.
I'm glad to see New Orleans that even though they don't know who's going to be playing quarterback, they didn't just run out and get a quarterback where everybody thought, oh, the Shador Sanders, or whatever it was. They realized again, you need to have an offensive line. It's
An odd, ch- an
what Jay
odd
just
choice
talked
though, in
about, right?
Calvin Banks though. That's
Strange choice,
something.
but
It's a
still,
strange choice.
position wise makes a lot of sense that because this is what you need to do. You need to build this team. They don't have a lot
Nope.
in New Orleans. So, and now they're not sure what Carr's going to be. They're not sure what they're going to do. But again, don't go crazy and go, oh, we got to get a quarterback. Again, you might be able to you still may be able to trade for Kirk Cousins. You still may be able to get a lot of different people.
Oh
So
boy.
instead of going nuts though, and really reaching for somebody that they just didn't care for, to pick an offensive lineman makes a lot of sense. And now, of course, the fan cam for Shador Sanders will begin in earnest, and every pick we will see him standing with his dollar sign jacket on and wondering where he's going to wind up. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how this all plays out. But that was my take on that pick. Was not so sure of the person, but I think it made a lot of sense to pick that position.
Joe, are you sticking around or
Yeah, I got a little time.
all
All right.
right. So we'll come in with some thoughts as we go along here, but let's talk about the Jets a little bit more, everyone's favorite topic. As we mentioned last week, by the way, the only team not to make it into as I mentioned this week, as I've seen this week, the only team not to make it into the playoffs during Pope Francis's reign as Pope. The only one, 55th NFL season, they're most disappointing at 5-12. So a new administration, and in the words of Bill Parcells, you need some new groceries to shop for. So here is the grocery list: 42nd pick at round 2, 73rd pick at round 3, 110th pick in round 4, a pair of picks at 145 and 162 in round 5, and round 6, 186 and 207. We want to say everything, but the Jets' real biggest needs are O-line, wide receiver, tight end, safety, and D-line. Jay, somebody that the Jets should see don jet green in the next few days, please.
I mean, look, I kind of, really, went into it when I was doing the Giants pick, only because that's a position that's kind of my niche here with you guys. But I decided to have a little fun with this Jets pick and look at a guy that they should take a flyer on. Because he's a legit pick, in the later rounds from, like, let's say round 5, pick 162, or, even round 6, he'll probably be available at 186 or even 207. And because I'm a fan, like the Steelers are, of guys with NFL bloodlines, and I saw him mock to the Jets, I think in Zach Rosenblatt's mock draft, who's the beat writer for the Jets for The Athletic, and it's Ray Mickens Jr., who's a safety out of Clemson. And yes, his dad is Ray Mickens, the former wide receiver who played for the Jets. Now, RJ, as he's called, 3-year starter at Clemson, played essentially both safety roles in former defensive coordinator Wes Goodwin's scheme. Free safety, nickel, in the box as the strong safety. Made the most of his final season, was 3rd in the team in tackles, 85, 2nd in picks with 2. So growing up as the son of an 11-year veteran, he grew up around the game. It shows the way he sees the field, especially when he's working from depth in the run game. He's a willing tackler, something that not a lot of defensive backs are these days, as we all well know. Guys, he's more considered to be more smooth than sudden with his movements when he's in coverage. He does trust his instincts to lead him into a good catch point to defend the pass. Doesn't consistently play up to his testing numbers, but he has a keen sense of football geometry. He takes precise physical angles when he's going to attack the football. Projects as a potential backup as a special teamer in the NFL. And as we were talking about earlier, Joe, teams need these type of players to fill out their roster. And I look at it this way. If you're going to take a guy at that point to fill that role in the draft, why not take a guy who has the bloodlines that have a tie to your own team?
Yeah, we've always talked about how beneficial is it, and in any sport. Even Patrick Mahomes growing up around a baseball team, just knowing how to be a professional, knowing what actually happens in a locker room, knowing that it is a job, and knowing how to be a professional at whatever you do. So anybody in bloodlines like that, I think, is always a positive pick.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Anthony, give me a name.
I'm thinking about bloodlines, but I'm not thinking about Jet bloodline. I'm thinking more of the yes, that's right. Not that bloodline, unfortunately. For
not acknowledging our tribal chief tonight, are we?
No, I'm actually thinking about a bloodline that played in South Florida, and that's I'm going with tight end Mason Taylor out of LSU. Now, obviously, I mentioned the bloodline. When your dad is Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, and your uncle is Zach Thomas, that's a pretty damn good bloodline. By the way, his aunt is Joy Taylor.
No. We're gonna stop on that. They're gonna cut you off immediately.
No. I was not going too far with that.
That's fine. Let's move on. That was 7 scandals ago. Let's move on.
All right. Well, look, it's 2024 season, all SEC. Single season record for tight end with 55 receptions, 1,000 yards. I just got like this. This is the Jets needed tight end, but I'm kind of happy they didn't go after Tyler Warren like some of the mock drafts kind of had him going to the Jets. I feel like a pass catching tight end, who can develop into a really great tight end, and even maybe an all-pro someday. Could be had later in the draft. Very natural mover, capable of running, expanding, route tree. Basically, he could be a deep threat as a tight end. Can track and adjust the throws for ideal consistency. focus is very underrated, and a guy who can and a guy with good body control when it comes to adjusting or moving blocks. He does have to work on his route running. He had, when he was at LSU, he was kind of a one route runner. He's gonna have to focus on that a little more, and his hands, and he has occasionally what I call Evan Ingham hands. Basically the football is hitting him in the wrong spot. So those are things he's gonna have to develop, but I do feel like he can really come in and be a contributor, even not necessarily as much as a starter, but as a guy who can come in and maybe get to just something as far as just another throwing option. I mean, that's pretty much if you look at the Jets weapon, Jets offense, you don't I can't remember the last time they had a tight end that can actually be a threat in the receiving game. It's been a while. I can't recall, but I do think Taylor is somebody that they can actually they can develop. I think that's someone. I think right now if I'm the Jets right now, you got the offense, you got the lineman you needed, you have the running back, you have the receiver. The tight end is someone that can come in and maybe be an immediate presence, or someone you can leave it develop. But he's not going. But he's not going to be someone that is going to be expected to be a game changer right out of the gate. And I feel like if the Jets had gotten Warren and he struggled out of the gate, that might have been a big problem, especially in New York. Well, the tabloids are about as merciless as it gets. So Taylor, I think is somebody that the Jets should have take a second look at. If he's there, I can see him taking a flyer on him and maybe the third, maybe the fourth round.
Well, Tyler Ward
Surprised at
is
the
even.
Chicago pick a little bit.
I was gonna say we'll talk about it in the tight end in the pass catcher segment. Tyler Ward isn't even the first tight end picked in this draft. We'll talk about Mr. Loveland from Michigan a little bit later and how he'll fit with the Bears. Stop smiling, okay? It doesn't mean you get a victory because now I'm going to dampen you down to pick a former Buckeye for my pick in this one, and that's Kyle McCord, obviously now more known as an Orange man, technically just Orange. Finished 10th, by the way, last year in the Heisman Trophy voting. So yeah, Ohio State is where he was beginning. Actually, been there so long in college. He had backed up C.J. Stroud as a freshman. Didn't play there too much then. Didn't play too much as a sophomore. And then in his junior season, he ended up having an ankle. During that time, he had an ankle injury, and he finished his college career with a big-time throw rate of 5.1% and then a turnover rate for the play rate of 3.6%. So kind of balances out. McCord had the 11th best clean pocket grade according to Pro Football Focus, 7th best big time throw rate in 2024. When he went to Syracuse last year, I feel like when he was at Ohio State, he kind of got a little bit of a bad rap because of the fact that there was still a lot of holes in that team and a lot of undeveloped team. And also, if they didn't have a college football playoff where you can immediately atone for all your mistakes in the college football playoff because you wouldn't be in the playoff to begin with. So he ended up transferring to Syracuse, and the numbers for him last year were insane. Best single season passing yard by an Orange man or any ACC player with over 4,700 completions record, pass attempts record, touchdown passes 34 record, 300-yard passing games, almost all of them 12 record, and attended 3 record last year with Syracuse. I think the one thing that you can see with McCord in the Jets system, and I know we didn't mention quarterback as a need technically for the Jets, but you have a flyer on Justin Fields. You still a project, and he can still be someone who you'll be very frustrated with in about 10 seconds. So I think there's a good possibility that the quarterback position is going to need to be filled sooner rather than later, even as a decent backup, just in case Taylor doesn't work out next year. So I think this is a pick that needs to happen, and I think Kyle McCord is a good flyer. You can take him in the 4th, 5th round if you need to. 3rd round, maybe. I feel like he's going to probably end up being more of a 4th round player, and he has enough of the age also. We kind of talked about this last week, Joe, too. more experience in life, and it's almost like a black mark to a lot of people when you go up into the pros.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a solid pick, and I think again once you get to the fourth and fifth round, again the Jets need a lot of stuff, but eventually they're going to need a quarterback to lead them. And if you want to take flyers, take one right here.
I was shocked by the lack of conversation. Like the Giants went out and got Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, and everyone talks about, oh, Giants need a quarterback, Giants need a quarterback. And I'm looking at the Jets going, so do you guys. Like, like obviously Justin Fields may not be the answer. I mean, he hasn't been the answer yet somewhere else. And you went on this
Your
2-year
seventh
travel
rounder, by the
where you
way, in a
thought
few
you were going
years
to win
ago.
the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's funny that there hasn't been a lot of talk about the Jets need a quarterback, probably maybe even worse than the Giants do at this point. At least we have two guys who played in the NFL. And Tyrod Taylor's fine, but again, you have two kind of iffy guys. Russell Wilson at least has played at a high level at one point. Jameis Winston, if he doesn't throw 50 interceptions, he throws 50 touchdowns. So, there
Oh,
seems
he
to be
usually throws
that.
both, by the way. It's not one
Yeah.
or the other. It's
It's
usually
25 and
both.
25. Yeah. It's one of those things where it just seemed like an odd thing. Like we pretty much took care of our needs for the next year or two, as Jay said, with the two guys that we picked, that now you can use your time to do it the right way if you have to, or if you need to still going forward. You gave yourself some time to do it. I think the Jets are in a worse spot at quarterback.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the future of those teams as we go along during the off season. But now it's time to talk about the positions in this draft. This is not politics. We don't want your positions in politics. That's banned here. We want to talk about positions on the football field. 2025, built for a better tomorrow. The quarterback spot is not as top heavy as we've seen in the past bunch of drafts, but with up to 7 QBs who have day 1 or 2 grades, first through third round, according to the Athletics' Dave Brugler. And we know how QB needy people are, so it might be more. You're going to see some future starters here. And Jay, there's a QB product from Oxford, Mississippi that might be going as soon as tonight.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the interesting things, and one of the things, well, when I was talking about, looking at who could potentially, somebody would be, this is the guy who I was thinking of when we said, could somebody, trade back into the first round, to take this guy, and who we're talking about is Jackson Dart. There are some evaluators think he's a mid-round pick. Others think he could go in round 1. In my opinion, Dart's going to need to sit and learn an NFL offense before starting, but he does have an intriguing skill set, and I can see why NFL personnel folk could be drawn to him. He's not that tall, 6'2", but he is well built, 225. He's an excellent runner, can be used in a quarterback run game. It's an option. You'd like to see him look downfield more often when he breaks the pocket. He does have a 9.5 scramble rate, or when he's under pressure, but he was an effective scrambler. He averaged almost 7 yards when he would take off scrambling wise. So his tendency to take off like that is understandable, but he will not be able to scramble as much in the NFL. So he will have to learn and develop that, ability to, maintain his downfield focus while he's under pressure. His arm talent is probably second in this draft class, only to Cam Ward. But then again, the quarterbacks in this draft aren't a group of overly spectacular throwers of the football. Dart can throw accurately off platform and maintain accuracy while getting hit, and that's a big plus at the NFL level. The biggest concern with Dart is that he's coming from a very simplistic spread offensive scheme that doesn't really translate to the NFL. So he'll likely need time to learn the things required to operate an NFL offense, like cleaning up his footwork, which can get muddy at times, making full field reads, which the offensive scheme rarely asked him to do at Ole Miss, and even taking a snap from under center, which he also rarely did. Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin was excellent at calling plays that got Dart's first read open, which is why sometimes it looks like Dart has already decided where he's going with the ball pre-snap, because he often goes to the same receiver on certain concepts. But that led to Dart struggling when getting late in his progression. Now, I saw this the most when looking at his film from the Florida game. Early in that game, he hit his first reads for big plays, but late in the game, when Florida took away those initial reads on those concepts, he still wound up throwing the ball to that first read, but this time the coverage was much tighter and he had less success. When it comes to natural throwing ability, Dart can make every type of throw. He doesn't have the high howitzer for an arm, but he does have a live one and has no trouble moving the ball downfield with ease. He throws outbreaking routes with timing, accuracy, and zip, a requirement for any NFL quarterback. He doesn't hesitate to make these throws if he sees off coverage and space outside. But Dart doesn't just have a fastball. One of his best skills is his ability to throw off speed, take a little off, put a little more touch on, and layer passes over defenders. That last one is a skill set not a lot of guys come out of college into the NFL with. The Ole Miss offense is a very much a free-flowing one, and wide receivers don't run precise timing routes. They kind of look for space and adjust their angles accordingly. So Dart hasn't had much experience with timing throws and sinking his feet with his progressions, which is why there aren't many examples on film of him getting through multiple reads on a single play. And the ones that I did see kind of showed a tendency for him to hop from read to read as opposed to hitch from read to read as most NFL quarterbacks do. But that doesn't mean he can't eventually learn how to do it. Dart does a good job of seeing what his receivers see and leading them into open spaces. Even though he'll put touch up on passes in the middle of the field, he rarely leads his receivers into big hits. And trust me, there ain't a wide receiver in the NFL who won't appreciate that. His accuracy on deep balls is very good, and he has shown an ability to hit his receivers perfectly in stride on deep posts and go balls. But there have been stretches where he's kind of been erratic and sprays the ball around. He's going to have to work on that as well. Pocket toughness, the willingness to stand in the pocket and take a hit in order to complete a pass is a trait that you either have or you don't. You rarely see quarterbacks develop it at the NFL level. And Dart is very willing to keep his eyes downfield and rotate into throws despite knowing he's going to get hit. He also can generate power and maintain accuracy in muddy pockets without a big runway in front of him. But where he struggled was against the blitz. He was sacked 9.6 of the time when he was blitzed, 10 sacks overall under those circumstances. And his numbers against the blitz are inflated by run-pass options, counting as blitzes because defenders are moving towards the line of scrimmage to play the run, something that probably will happen less in the NFL. On third and long situations, though, which is 7 yards or more and are considered true drop-back situations, his EPA per drop-back against the blitz is 0.05. Look, Dart has an intriguing skill set with a high ceiling, but there is a sizable gap that must be bridged between the offense he operated at Ole Miss and what he'll be asked to do in one in the NFL. Ideally, Dart will get drafted to a team where he can sit, learn a playbook, and clean up his footwork without the added pressure of actual game action. However, quarterbacks drafted in the first round are rarely afforded a redshirt year. With Dart's developmental gap, getting drafted in the second or third round, specifically to a team with an established starter, would be the best situation for him. After Cam Ward, Dart could have the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this draft, and he's only 21 years old. But if a desperate quarterback-needy team reaches for him earlier in the hopes that he can be their immediate franchise savior, that could prevent him from being the best quarterback he can be until he escapes that team, a la Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. So seeing where he lands will be a big thing to watch in this draft.
What's interesting about Baker is the fact that it was just more like the quarterback is going to get all the play, but Baker was the number one pick. In this case, with someone like Dart, if he goes day two, that might be the best thing for him, even if it's the difference between 22 and 34. And as a fan of the Steelers, by the way, having a redshirt quarterback, although Kenny Pickett really got a lot of room, and that might be a good spot for a guy like Dart, in my opinion, because Pittsburgh does afford you a little bit of time, although there's no real number one option right now outside of Mason Rudolph.
Right, but I'll tell you this, and I say this not because I think it's the best situation, but if he's going to land in the first round, landing with the Steelers at 20 is a good spot for him.
Agreed.
Because the reason the Steelers were happy and very happy to get Mason Rudolph to come back is I think they wanted to have somebody they already know in their quarterback room, regardless of who the guy, whether they draft a quarterback this year in Dart or someone else, or if, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers actually decides to come to Pittsburgh, or a Kirk Cousins trade develops, which to me, the best scenario for the Steelers is they somehow get Cousins in a trade. Rudolph is the number 2. Dart gets drafted at 21 and gets to learn for a year or two behind those guys. That would be the best scenario if he gets picked in the first round. So the later he goes, if he's going to go first round, the better, because that means he's going to wind up going to a team that has an established starter.
But also, again, that could also mean someone's going to trade back up. We'll see what happens as this run goes through.
But if somebody does trade back up, I have a feeling this is the guy they're trading back up to get.
I'd imagine. All right, Anthony. We've talked about Jalen Milroe a little bit before. Let's get into him a little bit more. Definitely a project. Definitely a high ceiling. I think a much lower floor. But Anthony, roll tide, just like Miss Sharon would say.
Oh, absolutely. Don't say it too loud, by the way. But
oh, that's right. I forgot. She's
don't say it too loud.
Not roll tide.
Well, you said though, Milroe is going to be a work in progress. And obviously, if you want the potential of Jalen Milroe, look at his numbers and his highlight reel from 2023. And if you want to look at what Jalen Milroe will be in reality, at least until he develops, you could go to last year, 2024, where he had 10 interceptions and only 5 touchdowns against teams in the SEC. And definitely struggled and definitely regressed as far as throwing the deep ball. 2023, obviously, you think back to the Iron Bowl and that throw he made on the back of the end zone that pretty much saved Alabama's seasoning and obviously got them into the college football playoff. But he had 12 rushing touchdowns to go with 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and close to 3,000 yards. But it was the fact that he was able to he showed off his big arm, and the fact that he was able to it was just a better season for him overall. Some of the things he's gonna have to work on. He lacked rhythm when he's hurried and rushed from the pocket. He makes mistakes. Obviously, when he telegraphs throws, lacking anticipation as well. He struggles to make those throws. His deep ball last season was very much inconsistent. Sometimes overthrowing receivers by 10, 15 yards, and sometimes just underthrown them by even more than that. So with Milroe, if you want to draft him, maybe he's second round. He's definitely a second round. I can't see anyone traded up into the late first round to draft him. He's definitely going to be a guy that's going to be, he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to be sitting at least for a year to learn, to get some reps in the preseason. And heaven forbid if he has to play because of an injury, he's not ready. I mean, this is a guy. Miller is someone who could be a good quarterback, develop properly, but he's definitely someone you're going to want to sit and have him kind of learn as an understudy in the quarterback room for his rookie season before you decide whether or not he's ready to kind of be a full-time starter in the NFL.
It's interesting, though, considering one of the better things for Milroe is the fact that 2 things that I've noticed with Milroe out of college. Number one, the way he started his career, because he played Texas at like his second game in college, and he was terrible in that game. He was kind of like being shown the ropes. Then his third game he played at the slop of South Florida, and he was even worse than that. And he was very close. Nick Saban was very close to just saying, "I'm not starting you again." But he got his groove back, and that's where he had that pass in that 4th and 26 later that season. And we'll see what happens. Joe does have to leave us now, so we thank Joe, by the way, for everything tonight. You can catch him with me this Monday on our final official review podcast of April as we talk about our NFL Draft Review. Thank you, Mr. Tufaro.
Joseph, always a pleasure, sir. Glad
thank you.
Nice
Great
to see you guys.
As always.
Thanks for your time, guys. See you.
No problem. See ya. We continue on with my incoherent rambling, although I'm going to talk about a very more important subject, Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, it's time to have that discussion. So let's talk about him, and then I think I might want to get a little more into this. So High level in Pat Shermer's RPO-based scheme. Ironically enough, Shermer was a big help into kind of growing the legend that was Shedeur Sanders. Single season records of Colorado for passing yards, 41-34, passing touchdowns 37, and total touchdowns 41. His athlete side, he's not as much of an athlete as Dion was, but he is a more polished passer than you can actually imagine him being. High completion percentage. Not a big fan of the Big 12 competition, but what are you going to do? It's still a major school. But he is a guy who did a lot of screens and checkdowns. I believe it's almost 25% of completions past 2 years were on throws of over 10 yards. That's it. So he is a guy who is going to dink and dunk a lot. He has not the greatest physical traits, so if he has a bad decision, he's going to pay the price for it. But he has the confidence that you want in a long-term starter, but you need timing in that offense. So he can't really go to a bad team when you think about it, because he's going to want to start immediately, and obviously there's some problems with there. So does limit turnover-worthy attempts, does make quick, subtle movements, is a winner, 23-3 at Jackson State, and he is a guy who you might want in late-game situations. But the weaknesses are pretty bad. Average arm strength, mediocre size, not as much of an athlete, holds the ball excessively long, and in games where he was being rushed, he took a lot of different sacks. He took a lot of sacks and a lot of quick throws that he's not going to get in the NFL. You could do worse than Shedeur Sanders. I still think he is the second best quarterback in this draft, but there has now become a market correction, thank God, for where he is actually going to go. While Cam Ward got that bump up to the #1 draft pick when he was probably like the 10th or 11th best athlete in this draft, Shedeur is probably fading out to the low first rounder that I think he should be. But I think still we sometimes discredit him for his accomplishments, which were at points one of the best quarterbacks in America. And it'll be very interesting to see again, Jay. This is a big one for fit, because if he goes to the right scheme, he can make it work. But if he doesn't, he could flame out within 5 years.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Shedeur. And there's a lot of guys who look, he's the most polarizing quarterback in this draft. He may be the most polarizing player in this draft. A lot of it is, and a lot of it, because this is real easy to, to highlight and to, to attack, is, the whole being Dion's kid, the whole, as I said at the top of the show when Anthony and I were talking about him, one GM's confidence, another GM's arrogance. There, to a lot of people, he just comes off in a way that you do not want the face of your franchise to come off, especially when you haven't done a damn thing, in the NFL. You talk about the on the field stuff. Yeah. And this is the thing that kind of jumps out at me. Everybody likes to talk about his completion percentage. Just 23.7% of his completions over the last 2 years were on throws over 10 yards. That means the reason his completion percentage is so stacked is because of a ridiculous amount of screens and checkdowns. There's a lot of people who do not believe he has the arm strength to complete the type of passes that you need to complete at the NFL level. Look, I don't doubt that Shedeur has a high football IQ. There is no doubt about that. The guy recognizes what's in front of him. Does he have a quick release? Yeah. Gets the ball accurately out. But the thing is I don't know how much more he's going to be able to develop at the NFL level. Inconsistent pocket field. Granted, a lot of that was the poor protection, 90-odd sacks. But a lot of that had to do with he just would not throw the ball away, which is ironic considering that the high volume of screens and checkdowns. I just don't know. I don't know how well he's going to factor in the NFL. And if there's anybody who needs to go to the right offensive fit, it is Shedeur. That's got to be a timing-based offense. And if there's ever a guy, his ego and his confidence and his bravado may scream day one starter, but his skill set does not. He would be best served going somewhere where he does not have to start right away. Do I think Shador needs to be humbled a little bit? Yeah. Because I'm sorry, you can't play in the NFL as a quarterback. Your skill set needs to match your that bravado, if you will. And you know the old saying, everybody's got to play until they get hit in the mouth. I don't know if Shador Sanders is kind of really understands the difference between getting hit in the mouth in the Big 12 and getting hit in the mouth in the NFL. We'll see how he responds when it happens.
I would say this too. A lot, his high completion percentage is kind of a mirage because of the check downs and the bubble screens and everything. However, when you think about the poor offensive line and the fact that he really only had one major weapon on offense the last 2 years with Travis Hunter, and he was and was still able to set single season records for passing yards, passing touchdowns, and total touchdowns despite all of that. It just tells me that you can say what you will about the bravado and the sometimes attitude that may rub some coaching staff the wrong way, but then it's like, his dad literally. If there's anyone that he can learn about NFL life in the NFL, it's his dad. We forget, for as good as Deion Sanders was throughout his NFL career, early on he was on a really bad Atlanta Falcons team for a reason. I mean. And he had to suffer through that. He suffered through the criticism, remember, of being a two-sport athlete. I mean, the guy played the NFL game and played the World Series game in the same day, and took criticism with that and took it in stride. And Deion is unapologetically who he is. But then you think about the connections Deion Sanders also have some of his former teammates with the 49ers and the Cowboys, respectively. And it's like, well, this is a young man that, while his skill set just says starter right out of the gate, he's got plenty of tutelage to lean on, and on the next level. And I think that is something that is going to be very important. I think Shador may have to take it down a notch. Unfortunately, the NFL is a league that will humble you right out of the gate if you're not careful. But I do think he is someone that, if he goes into, say, a West Coast style offense where there's a little more RPO, that is really fits Shador Sanders. He doesn't have the athleticism of his dad, and again, not too many people have the athleticism of Deion Sanders. But he is someone who is a high quarterback IQ, a guy who can read who is shown can read the field. Had to throw an awful lot because he was basically playing against the other team and his own defense at times, who just could not get stops when needed. But it's going to be interesting to see where he goes because of the fact that the scheme has to be perfect.
It does. It does. I'm gonna cut you off here because I want to get to the wide receivers. But I think the true most humbling thing for him would be to fall to day 2. Because then all of a sudden he might actually start realizing that he also could put a chip on his shoulder. And I think that might actually help him a little bit not to coast when he goes into camp. It'll be very interesting to see what Shador Sanders is when we get to training camp. That's what I really am interested in seeing. All right. We are going to move on now to the wide receiver position, albeit kind of not the scarcest position in the NFL these days. Reed, you can be cheaper with them. Voters, take note. It's still very important, though. Get a big player, make the QB's lives easier. And because there are so many big players in this draft, we're talking pass catchers, so include tight ends in here, we're going to give everybody 2 picks to make their lives a little bit easier and more research. But, that's the deal. And you're going to start, and Ted McMillan went off the board for Arizona a little bit higher than I think I expected him to. He went number 8 to the Panthers. Let's talk about him first.
Yeah, I just the Panthers pick is obviously to give Bryce Young some weapons, and at 6'4", McMillan is a big target without question. He's some of his strengths is he's tries at the catch point, slender body, uses his hands very well. Um, and somebody that uh let's see, in 2024, obviously first team associate All American, All Big 12 conference, still football with 1300 college football, 1,319 yards. His 2023 tape highlight reel tape obviously is filled with highlight reel touchdowns. But one of his biggest strengths, and obviously we have a young quarterback with Bryce Young, is how good can he play on the fly. And one of McMillan's biggest strengths is being able to adjust the coverage and scrambles when quarterback is on a fly and just kind of improvising things. Has great feels and covers, has very long strides to run routes and get open. Um, so for McMillan, I think this number 8 was a little high. I understand the pick, but I thought that a lot of people thought Carolina would go defense with their pick. But I kind of understand the pick with McMillan with someone who can go out and get the 50-50 ball. And that's pretty much what that was entitled to. And so my other receiver, for whatever reason, my laptop is running slow as hell right now. Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, is a guy who can work all three levels of the field, similar consistency, productivity. Route running needs a little bit refinement, so I can see him being late first round, second rounder, maybe second, third. Since he's going to be somebody I can see kind of slide into a slot position, the slot receiver. Maybe not a guy who's going to play every down, but someone who comes in with in the 3-4 wide receiver formations. And last season he had 987 yards receiving. Big play potential, agile feet, good alteration of route tempo. His ability to sink slow and open quickly against bump and run coverage is going to be really a big help for whatever team he goes to. Some of the things he has to work on. He takes his foot off the gas pedal if he feels like his route is covered. Now, Jay, you've been in the quarterback room, and we've both been in film rooms. One of the absolute no-nos is taking your foot off the gas pedal and basically quitting on a play. And game film will have you literally targeted for that the moment a coach points that out to you. Mm-hmm. And he has that, and that's a habit he's gonna have to get out of it. NFL, if the ball's not coming to you, you're either blocking, you're a decoy, but you're doing something on that play, or you're blocking on that play. And he's gonna have to figure it out, even when the ball and the play is not going to him. He's gonna have to stay alert and be active on that play, and just be ready. Gotta play strong. He has to be a little more consistent, working on the back throws to kind of protect the point of attack on far as passes. And he has to work on his timing as well too, because he did have a small case of the drop. So those are things he's gonna have to clean up as far as the next level. The quitting on a play is definitely something that he's gonna have to get out of his system right away, and he's not gonna have much of a career if he doesn't. But Golden definitely has potential. He is somebody that can really develop as a number three receiver. Maybe in training camp, work hard depending on what team and system he goes into to be the number 2 guy. But that's kind of why I'm sitting there with Matt and Golden at this point.
You are sitting Golden. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with some of those wide receivers in the draft. Again, I think Golden does have a lot of promise, though, when it comes to being. I think he could be anywhere near number 2 wide receiver. All right, Jay.
Before we continue, I told my nieces last night. Sometimes it's better to be unintentionally funny and people laugh with you than to try to be funny and people laugh at you.
And then people not laugh. What's worse is if people aren't laughing at you at all. Then all of a sudden, then you really know you've done a bad job. Then there's no unintentionally funniness into it. All right.
They a
Uh,
carrot top.
that is true. So Jay, I'm going to start this joke very simple. A Buckeye and a Wolverine walk into a bar, and then somebody plants a flag into the bar, and then a whole brawl comes out, and then the pepper spray comes in. All right, Jay,
Wow.
I'm gonna have you start off with Colston Loveland from Michigan, the tight end that got picked number 10 to, ironically enough, a team with Cole Kmet on it in the Chicago Bears. Number one tight end, a little surprising for me because we'll talk about the other tight end in a second, but can't go wrong with this pick. It's one of the better tight end picks that I've seen in a generation.
Yeah, I mean, he's Dane Brugler, the draft guru for the Athletic, had a first/second round grade on him. Number 11 on his top 100 and his second ranked tight end behind the aforementioned Tyler Warren. He's got great size for a tight end, 6'6", 248. And in a injury-riddled, quarterback deficient season, he still somehow managed to put up 56 catches for 582 yards, a little over 10 per catch, and 5 TDs. This is a guy who fast, fluid athlete, really good at running seam routes, has a great release off the line of scrimmage to get into his route and give the quarterback a target, something that's really important. Tight ends have really become the kind of safety net for quarterbacks in the league, so that's it's a big plus. Has shown an ability to win on slants or posts when he's one-on-one against a cornerback. He's really good, and he's learned how to set up defenders really well, snap his breaks, and create spacing versus man coverage. Great hands, great catching radius and leaping ability. Really good over the middle. He can take that hit and bounce after it and still hang on to the ball. He's not a great blocker. He's more of the pass catcher than the inline tight end, but he will fight. He's the outside guy. He doesn't have the body type to really be a run blocker, but that's not really going to be why you're drafting a guy like that. You do want him to, he does have room to improve as a run blocker, so hopefully that'll happen at the NFL level. But the thing I like about him, I mean, this is the guy who, 3-year starter in a pro-style offense at Michigan, lineup primarily, he spent a lot of time in the slot for almost 48% of his snaps, as opposed to inline and wing, 32.5 as a junior. This guy has been one of the most talented. He's been literally the most talented pass catcher in the Wolverines receiving corps since he kind of came on board. I like his ball skills. I like his ability to be that safety net. He's multi-level receiving threat. Love the way this guy plays. His ability to actually make what we say chicken salad out of, chicken, is something that I think will translate. I don't want to make the Travis Kelce comparison because it's not quite there yet. But I mean, this is a guy who has great speed, play speed. He runs the full route tree. So if you as a offensive coordinator, you got a guy who you can put him in multiple spots. You don't have to take him. You can stay with the tight end on the field and still be able to do your 3x1s, either with him in the stack or split out as the one, which is a great mismatch option to have if you're an offensive coordinator. He will need to improve his technique of route running a little bit. We know you got to be a little more precise at the NFL level. But I think as he develops over the course of his NFL career, that'll happen. This guy's got a collection of athletic traits and catching skills that gives him a really high ceiling. I think he's going to become one of the next generation of tight ends, along with Warren, who, Rabbi, you'll talk about, the next generation of that level of tight end. And to complete the joke, the reason the Rabbi kind of opened up with that is because the receiver I'm looking at is from the arch rival Ohio State Buckeyes, and that's Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 201. Another guy with a first or second round grade, number 28 in the top 100, number 4 ranked receiver in this draft class. Great season last year, 81 catches, 1,011 yards, 12 and a half per catch, 10 TDs. Second time he's topped 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in a season. Only Marvin Harrison has done that in Buckeye history. It's a guy who was a 3-year starter, worked out of the slot primarily in Chip Kelly's offense. 81.1% of those snaps came in the slot. This is a guy who spent his entire 4-year career sort of in the shadow because he played next to 4 guys who became top 20 draft picks. The aforementioned Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And last year, 2 guys who are also probably going to be first-round picks in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. This is a guy who's but I mean, if you take a look, and as we all do when we're doing this type of research, this is a guy who finished with the most reception, 205 in Ohio State history, second all time in receiving yards. Only Jenkins had more, and it was only by 30. This guy's not going to be a flashy. He's not a diva. He's not going to, be making the big splash pay, but this is a guy savvy, rugged, NFL ready instinct and skill sets. This is a guy who understands coverages and knows how to attack them. Enters and exits his breaks really well. Granted, it's going to be a little tougher for the type of targets you expect for a guy like him to be getting in the NFL. But that's a situation where his ball tracking skills and his hand strength are going to be valuable assets. He's a very quarterback friendly target. Not because he's bigger, stronger, or faster than any of the guys who are going to cover him, but because he understands the subtleties required to get separation from the guys covering him, and he knows how to command the catch point. Can line up outside, but he will probably thrive best in a slot role where he can, increase the options a play caller is going to have with his skill set. I like the way he fights through press coverage. It's something that you need. More of a one-speed route runner, but he's comfortable working in traffic. He knows how to he's not afraid to go over the middle of the field. On verticals, he tracks the ball well, knows how to prevent defenders from poking the ball away, knows how to find open spaces in zones. He knows how to adjust his route if the play gets prolonged due to pressure or the pocket breaks down. There are a lot of teams that like him for his knowledge and his leadership when they meet with him. And, you always want to have that guy be your wide receivers when you ever find a guy who's doesn't come across as a diva, but kind of comes in with the type of, this guy's already a pro's pro and he hasn't even set foot in the NFL yet. That's the kind of guy you want to have on your team, and you're worth making a pick on a guy like that. Whoever winds up getting him, this is a guy who's going to be an early starter in the slot. He's going to get in a lot of rotation and snaps in 3 wideout sets. But what I'll be interested to see, he was a decent punt returner at Ohio State, so it'll be interesting to see if that's a role that he also fills at the NFL level.
I feel like we're going to get to the point where we're going to see every team have an Ohio State wide receiver in the near future. Just look at what Jackson Smith-Njigba was doing with Ohio State. Now they're number 1 wide receiver after trading DK Metcalf to Pittsburgh this offseason.
Yep.
Okay, so might as well talk about Tyler Ward since we just talked about Colston Loveland a little bit ago. The Colts got him at number 14. And the reason is, because why the fuck not? He is a prototype that the Colts want to find at the tight end position. Shane Steichen talked about it in the NFL Scouting Combine. You wanted someone who could just go right down the middle. And Indianapolis does not have a tight end that is really considered as pass catcher. They're all specialists. They wanted a guy who could be a blocking receiver. And although Warren still needs to work a little bit on the blocking skills, he's getting better. But this is one of the best players, period, in this draft, not just in the field. And I also brought up Jack Doyle, by the way, when mentioning him, who was a 2-time All-Pro, even though he never was really a big pass catcher for the Indianapolis Colts. Warren was a 2-year starter at Penn State. He was used everywhere. You want him in line. You want him had to take 40 wildcat snaps. Did that last year in a short yard situation. He shared the tight end room. He's been there for a while. Then he shared the tight end room with one Mr. Pat Fryermuth, who is now doing some big things for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Single C games, single season career receiving records last year. Unfortunately for Jay, he knows what the single game is record after he was. I think he's still catching balls at the Coliseum against USC. Also,
all over SC's secondary.
Also, seventh in the Heisman Trophy voting, something that you haven't seen in almost over 45 since 1977. It's insane how he was good. A high efficiency pass catcher, only dropped 3 balls out of 135 targets last year. That's insane. Aggressive as a blocker. You will fall off run blocks from time to time. Still has a little bit to do as a runner, but he is a rookie NFL starter. He is going to catch everything in his path. Well-built athlete. Has had more one-handed grabs in his senior season, in his last season than drops. That's insane. And he had 56.2% of his receiving yards post-catch. And again, does good in the Wildcat, is another unassuming type person. So he's a pro. 104 catches last season. He reminds me of the impact that Brock Bowers has had already with Las Vegas. And I mean, he's going to be right there as the number 1 wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts next year. Weaknesses, there is a few. Only 5.9% of targets, 20 yards or more. But again, your tight end is your safety net. That's a safety net stat right there. Will hurry through routes. And again, his route running needs to work a little bit. And has average arm length as well, which is not good for blocking. But those are minor grabs because this is one of the best pure athletes, again, in this draft. And I think the Colts got him for a steal at number 14, if you really want my real opinion on it.
Yeah.
Luther Burden is the other person I'm going to pick. Luther Burden the third. He was a 3-year starter at Missouri, and probably for many people would have easily been the number 1 pick in the draft. This just happened about a year ago, but he only had one 100-yard receiving performance in 2024. He was an All-American sophomore, but enough flashes that you can still understand why he should be a 1st to 2nd round pick at the worst. High volume of quick hitters and crossers, and he had a big burst. His route running is not great. It is what we consider as in the you need a lot of work. It's called work in progress. Still working on route setup and separation, and but he is a king of yak. He is a guy who, if he gets the ball, goodbye. He has above average foot speed, high volume of quick targets, again 7.3 career yards after catch per reception. Also another punt returner, 10.5 yards per punt return, had a 78-yard touchdown as a freshman. Had a catch in 34 straight games, never missed a game due to injury, and has a lot of big lower body agility. So he has the works to be a solid NFL wide receiver, number 2 option at worst. Just 10 catches, though, 20 yards or more in 2024. Anthony talked about it before. There has been video of him looking disinterested in some routes. Not great when you have to look at that, because you look at the tape, people are not going to like when you look disinterested on routes, especially in today's NFL. That immediately gives you a red flag. Doesn't do a great job in blocking. He's more of a get in the way blocker. He's not somebody who's going to do it. And the 2024 wasn't great, as I mentioned beforehand. So that's going to be something that needs to be looked at, because he had a lot of attention on him. And if he was better, he probably would not be talked about as a future pick. He would have already been picked. He would have gone probably ahead of Ted McMillan. I know it's Citroa, but I'm saying Ted McMillan because, Tet is a much better name than the full name right now, unless he wants to be named that. But back to Burden. I think this is a very good pick for whoever gets him. And again, you're probably going to get him at a little bit of a discount than you would have gotten him 12 months ago. That's not bad. We move on to the running back position. And as we saw from Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry last year, the running back position is no joke. It is truly one of the most important spots on the field yet again. And with veterans like that doing well, imagine if you, yes, you, pick up a cheap young rookie. Anthony, starting with the beast from Chapel Hill, pick me someone who's going to fill that superstar bill in 2025 as a rookie.
Yeah, but I looked at Hollywood's Marion Hampton earlier today, and it's so funny because he's a big back and a NFL ready body. He reminded me of another Hampton, uh, that I watched come out of the South, and that's the name of
Oh,
Rodney Hampton. Uh,
yeah.
you think about how big he was. Help at least before he got the injury in the playoff game against Chicago. How he helped. He was a big part of the Giants win the Super Bowl 25. But then after he took over the starting running back position, how he was just the consistent workhorse back, a guy who you could catch out of the backfield, just a big back with sprinter speed. And Omarion Hampton reminds me of that as well. He was a beast on the 2023 season, even better, and he didn't have Drake May as the quarterback last season. And this is where defense is selling out to stop him. He rushed for 100 or more yards in 10 of the 12 games in 2024, set a single season record for North Carolina with 2,033 all-purpose yards. He reads the blocking scheme, collects his speed to accelerate through congestion. I'm reading this off the Athletic, by the way. A pressive cut to a silver's a daylight. Basically, you don't need a whole. In other words, he's a guy who don't need a whole lot to look for pay dirt. You give him a small inch, he's going to go 50, 60 yards before you know it because he has the build to break through tackles and he has the speed to outrun defensive backs. So that is a deadly combination as a running back. Going back to the scout report, he amassed the gas pedal into second level defenders. Those so at the expense of his balance, and those heavy hits will take their toll over time. Basically, long story short, he's gonna have to learn how to make people miss because you can't be bit back and just plow people over time and time again. Even Jerome Bettis, who they know very very fondly, is a
Mm.
guy who you know what he was called the Bucks for a reason, but he's not. He would make you miss in an open field, which is why he's in Canton, Ohio now as we speak. Um, he doesn't have the most creativity when it comes to running. He's just like I said. The comparisons to Rodney Hampton is it's just unbelievable. And the fact that Rodney Hampton, just like Omari Hampton, is a north-south runner. They don't dance around the backfield. They go straight to point A to point B, hit the hole hard, and go from there. That is what you try to teach running backs. Sometimes the guy get caught up in the whole Madden football, ESPN highlight reel of trying to, you know, kind of dance around and go for the big play every carry. But he's a guy who can he's somebody that I can see being in the top five and as far as yards per carry because he's just that kind of running back, a guy who could just get 4 or 5 yards on accident. And when you're an offense, especially in today's NFL, what you want to do is you want to shorten the down and distance as much as you can. You want to that first down and that second down is so important as far as yards and distance and managing that because a decent running back can open up some of the playbook. A good running back and a great running back opens up the entire playbook on one carry, and he has that ability to do that. I think he's going to be a steal wherever he goes because he's that kind of running back who can literally be a game changer the moment he steps onto the field. Either has this workman-like mentality, workhorse, let's move the chains, let's milk the clock, let's keep the ball going, keep the clock going, let's keep the ball moving. Or he's a guy that if you run out of your gaps, he will get the home run for you, like kind of like no, it's kind of like my mind would blank for a second. A Zach Crockett from back in the day, or
Ooh.
even a Natron Means, or dare I say a Christian Okoye, just a big back who is deceptively quick. And if you're not careful, he will get a big run on you. So he is that kind of running back that I think if he's on a board and you even have a need at running back, or you just feel like you probably need another well, I say a dash of salt And as far in the tomato soup to spice things up a little bit and take it up a notch. This is a guy you should highly take into consideration.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, I really, really like this back. I think he really just proves like that's the type of guy that you said north south. That is the definition of north south runner. And I feel like we have a lot of them in this draft. And I feel like one of them is about to be talked about right now
Oh, by the
in
way, Napoleon Kaufman is the guy I was thinking about for the Raiders.
There you
yes,
go.
I
All
loved
right.
him. Loved him more in college than I did in the
Yes.
NFL. That's worrying me. Um, okay, let's make it easy. Ashton Jeanty ran for over 2,600 yards in his senior season, was the best back on this board by a mile, and the Las Vegas Raiders picked him at number 6 for a good reason. Jay, is he going to be worth the squeeze in the NFL?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Ironically enough, I mean, the Raiders were the team he was most mocked to, and ironically enough, earlier this month, the Athletic did a piece on why the Raiders taking him as a top 10 pick would be probably be a mistake. I'll get into the specifics of that in a second. Interestingly enough, Abika just went to he went to Tampa Bay. That's a good pick for them, by
It's
the
a
way.
really good pick.
Really good pick. Gives Baker another weapon. Um, as you said, Rabbi, over 2,601 yards on the ground, most rushing yards in a college football season since Barry Sanders, 7 yards a carry, 29 touchdowns on the ground, 23 catches for 138 yards, 6 per catch, 1 TD through the air. Here's a stat that really jumped out at me. 1,733 of those 2,601 yards came after contact. That is 2/3 of his rushing yards. Guy was the Heisman runner-up. Won the award for best running back in the nation as well. Um, the thing is about him, like he plays a position that I think up until last year had kind of become somewhat devalued. But as Anthony talked about, this is a really deep running back draft. So if the running back position is having a bit of a renaissance, and the NFL is a copycat league. This is a great year to be a running back. And Genty's talent is why he got drafted as high as he did. Guy's the ultimate yardage creator. He's gonna, in theory, he should be able, with his talent and skill set, be able to succeed, independent of how good his run blocking is. We'll see how that goes. He's in the threat of, guy forces linebackers to flow hard outside. He takes advantage of that with making great cutbacks, which leads to a lot of the chunk plays he had last season. His vision, balance, and elusiveness get it done inside, and the threat of what he can do as a runner. And he's scheme neutral, so he'll fit whether it's a gap or zone rushing offense. Boise State ran elements of both of those in Dirk Cotter's offense running game scheme. It's going to create ideal play action opportunities for his team, allowing his next play caller to make life a little easier for his quarterback. Compact, muscular. Could be some minor concerns surrounding his massive workload at Boise State last season, but this is a top flight running back. He's capable of becoming, the face of an offense in a league where the pendulum might be swinging back to the running game. Guy has future all-pro talent. That basically was Dean Brugler's summary of him. And all of this is why Jandy's the unquestioned number one running back prospect in this draft. Third overall prospect on both the Athletic Consensus Big Board and Brugler's Top 100. And you'll be hard-pressed to find any draft board, ESPN, NFL.com, what have you, that ranks him outside the top 10. But that doesn't mean an NFL team with a top 10 pick should select him. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. In fact, here's why it might be considered to be a mistake. The Raiders, and I understand why Pete Carroll wants a guy like Jeanty. He's looking to replicate the Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch situation by pairing Jeanty and a decent dose of Raheem Mostert with Geno Smith. But in order for a running back to provide that type of impact, he needs an offensive line, and the Raiders are kind of lacking in that area, especially in the running game, as evidenced by their Running backs last year for the Raiders, 1.1 yards before contact, one of the worst rates in the NFL last year. Look, I think this kid has all the talent and skill to be a good running back in the NFL. Does need to improve his pass catching and pass protection skill sets overall. Wasn't asked to do too much pass pro at Boise State. Wasn't asked to do too much in the way of route running either. But I see why the comps used with him are running backs like LaDainian Tomlinson, Marshall Faulk, a faster version of Maurice Jones-Drew has been thrown around. MJD himself said, quote, Janty's the best prospect I have seen in the last 10 years with special contact, balance, and vision. He can beat you inside or outside, and he can catch. If the Raiders beef up the offensive line later in the draft, and general manager John Spytek does have an affinity for offensive linemen, so you have to believe there are some, hogs on his draft board. Then taking Janty will ultimately prove to be a good pick. Pete Carroll does want to run the ball a lot, and Janty is built for that. The Raiders believe his combination of size, speed, balance, and ability to break tackles, along with his receiving skills, will help him become an impact player even as a rookie, and even if the blocking up front in front of him isn't that great, it just remains to be seen. All I will tell Raider Nation right now, just don't expect him to have the same kind of year he had at Boise State, okay? Don't expect that. Could he potentially rush for 1,000 yards with the offensive line that he's got in front of him? I don't know. I don't think Carroll expects him to. Mostert's already there, so you can kind of bring him along. I think if you upgrade the offensive line this year and over the next couple of years, I think the pick of Janty will pay off a little further down the road, more likely than it is to pay dividends immediately this season. Honestly, he'd have been better served going to a team that already had a well put together offensive line, but it's Pete Carroll. We know what his identity as a head coach, so you can't really be surprised by the pick.
The thing is, the running back is almost the last thing you need for your team, just because that's almost like when the Eagles improved to where they were last year. That was the last thing that they needed. That was again, that's what we call a luxury pick. And teams in that spot who need a lot more than that don't necessarily have the benefit of a luxury pick. But Janty was just too good to pass up. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and honestly, Rabbi, I mean, we know that Pete Carroll wasn't hired.
He's 70. He's the oldest coach in the NFL by far.
And here's the thing. I think, especially with Tom Brady whispering in Mark Davis's ear, and Davis doesn't have, also along with the fact that Davis isn't known for having knee-jerk responses to, automatically firing his head coaches if they have a rough first year. Last year was kind of a different situation. Pete Carroll, I think, as a veteran head coach with all that experience and a Super Bowl ring, I think he'll have more than just a year or two of runway to kind of do what he wants to do. Especially, I think, with Brady kind of helping to kind of make better front office decisions than maybe the previous front office setup under Davis did. So I think this is an investment in the future. Yeah, it kind of reeks of being a luxury pick at number 10. You could have very easily taken one of the better offensive linemen with this pick and then taken, a lot of the other guys that are potentially available. Dylan Sampson, SEC Player of the Year running back out of Tennessee, would probably be available day 2. You could have definitely either one of, not to spoil it, but either one of the guys out of Ohio State was going to be around day 2. There were plenty of options you could have gone to get a quality running back day 2 and taken one of the higher ranked offensive linemen here. Spytek may be looking at it the other way around. Like I said, how this pick goes down is going to be linked to, it'll be kind of based on what Spytek does with the rest of his draft this year and how they look and what their plan is over the next couple of years.
Well, this is a team that took Darius Hayward-Bay, number 7, when they needed the luxury pick, and that didn't really work out too well. The Ohio State guys that you mentioned are, thank you for spoiling, right here as my next pick. So picks for running back. The first thing I'm going to mention is Travion Henderson, 4-year starter at Ohio State. And when you win the national title, you did it with a lot of players that were really, really good. And Henderson is one of the people that actually stayed there for a while. He did set records as a freshman, had injuries, and then split carries as a senior with the next person I'm going to mention in just a second. But because of him playing in the timeshare, he had 7.1 yards per carry last year and still ended up at the top 5 in school history in rushing yards. Henderson is bigger, is a smaller guy, 5'10", 202. So he's not going to be great, but he's not going to be graceful. His vision is kind of messy, but he can bounce laterally, smash accelerators, is somebody who is also a good pass catcher at times. He secures grabs away from his frames. What you need to do in the NFL if you're going to succeed, because I think at this point, you're going to get somebody in the second or third round. You want to see him do multiple things so you can get more snaps. But his versatile skill set will help any backfield out there. Strengths, instant acceleration, as 22.1% of his carries last year, 10 yards or more. Has only fumbled twice in 4 years, didn't do it in any of the past 2 seasons, and he never lost any of those fumbles. Ohio State recovered both of those fumbles. When he is lined up with man-to-man with linebackers in space, 11.1 yards per catch average. Good blocker, and a guy who, again, is going to be a team player because he split carries with the next person I'm going to talk about in just a second. Patience is a little hot and cold, tries to reset, definitely is kind of somebody who needs to stay to the north-south line, but doesn't do that. So I'm interested to see what Travion Henderson does. Should be somebody who comes off the board tomorrow, probably in the second round. Quinshaw Junkins is the guy who he shared time with last year. He was a transfer from Ole Miss, ironically enough, and one of the best 2-yard running stretches in history, and then did it again last year in the 2024 season because he wanted to win a national title in Ohio State. And if you score 3 touchdowns in the national championship game, going to do just that. Not as dynamic as other backs in this class. Attitude runner. So he has quickness, he has vision, he has violence. You need violence, especially in that spot. This is a bigger guy. He is 6 feet 221. So he's got a lot of different verticals, a lot of different ways that he can really get into the game. And again, he is a beast out there. He is also a serviceable pass catcher, good screen game. Also, 1 fumble in the past 2 seasons. How can you do that wrong? Had only player in Ole Miss history with 17 total touchdowns or more in a season. He did that in his 2 years over there. And he also didn't miss a game in his past 3 seasons. Great vision, not slow at all at any times. However, not a great getaway speed person, so not going to see him in the true open field. Again, quick and decisive, not a north and south guy, which is kind of funny because Ohio State had all of the weapons that you could possibly get that you don't even need to be like, here, go through that. That's all you have to do because you have weapons in every single line. And he had over almost 800 career touches in college, so he has some tread on the tires. It's going to be very, very interesting to see going forward what this Ohio State tandem is going to do. As we said before, you're going to probably see them both in the NFL. Don't think they'll be starters, but they're both going to be playing on Sundays in 2025. All right, let's move on to our second to last topic on the line. We've said this before, finally defense wins championships. You have a lot of options on defensive roles, although the meat of this defense sandwich comes from edge rushers, 6 of them with first-round grades and first-round grades only. So let's go, Anthony. You're going to start us off, and we've given Jay some shit tonight, so let's give some more love to Michigan. Let's build up his ego a little bit and talk about a Michigan player.
Yeah, Mason Graham. I just drafted by Cleveland. I just think about good grief, you're gonna have this guy lined up alongside Miles Garrett. Which is and look, the Browns added to the women's business strength for the team, and that is the defensive line without question. Um, Grant, he's an ideal fit scheme for the Browns. Great technique, elite leverage, post step quickness, and the Browns play a 4-3 base scheme. They have an impact on obviously stopping the run and passing downs, and obviously has a background as a 3 down player. Let me give me just a second to pull up the rest of this information. 2 year starter at Michigan, obviously, as Jay knows. Naturally plays some low position, consistently with leverage. 2024 stats, first team All Big Ten, finalist for the Chuck Bednarik Award. Started 12 games, 45 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Did not play in the Real Quest Bowl win over Alabama. I guess that's obviously when you're a high draft pick and it's one of the lesser bowl games. It makes sense to sit that one out. But here's some of his strengths: plays with a nonstop motor, easy movement. Jay, you know that. I mean that's
yeah.
almost that is almost a catalyst for a team that just come off a national championship not too long ago. By the way, gets the blockers before they get into the action. Compact power, instant punch ability to stand at the point. Lateral quickness to eliminate reach blockers and penetrate the gaps. That's great for stopping the run. Former wrestling background. So leverage obviously is something that he's familiar with. Accurate hands and slippery upper body to infiltrate the pocket. Some of his weaknesses that he does get on. Lack of length creates additional work to get around the wide bodies. Maybe not the longest, lengthiest guy in the world. But when you think about this pick, and I think the Cleveland Browns, this wasn't. I don't think this was a safe pick as much as this is a really, really good pick. To add to the fact that the Cleveland Browns, they are I think first team. I mean, you have somebody now that could be a running mate with Miles Garrett and really disrupt offenses every Sunday. So I like this pick. I like this pick for Cleveland. They do have some other things to get off the shopping list later on in this draft, but defense. I mean, it's nothing wrong with sometimes adding to making a strength even stronger. And that's what the Cleveland Browns did at number 5 in the draft. Let me just double check. Yes, at number 5.
Let's continue the Michigan love, Jay.
Where the Michigan love continues with one of my favorite players to ever wear the maize and blue, and that's Will Johnson, cornerback, 6'2", 194. Brugler has a first/second round grade on him. He's number 18 in his top 100. He's the number 2 ranked cornerback. Now, granted, Will only played 6 games last year due to an injury, had only 2 picks because of that. Both of them returned for touchdowns. This is a guy who was a 3-year starter at Michigan, predominantly an outside cornerback when Wink Martindale was his defensive coordinator, because Wink ran a zone-heavy scheme. Only 14.8% of Johnson's coverage snaps came in man-to-man. But after he had a really great sophomore season, defensive MVP honors in the national title game, kind of up and down last year, largely because of that injury. Despite the lack of man-to-man for the most of his time at Michigan, he is comfortable in both press and off coverage. Plenty of athleticism and route recognition allows him to seamlessly transition or attack the football. He's not shy about getting physical at the top of routes and in pursuit. Does need to improve his tackling mechanics and execution. More of a good than great in terms of twitch and speed in terms of what you're looking for in that skill set from a cornerback. But he does have great eyes, feet, and coverage IQ, which kind of helps offset that. He knows how to make plays on the football. This is a guy who should be a day one starting cornerback. Teams love big, fluid cornerbacks that have ball skills, and that's exactly what Johnson gives you. Instinctive, plays with good body control, change of direction in space. he's better at playing with his eyes forward, meaning in zone defense, as opposed to chasing routes downfield in man. Displays really good pre-snap recognition. He can read and anticipate the routes and throws at a very high level, hence the pick sixes. He is considered a ball hawk, and he knows how to play that role. Does need to kind of balance that mentality with a healthy respect for NFL route runners. As he might not be able to recover against NFL wide receivers the same way he was able to in college. The things that they really like about cornerbacks and his areas of concern that stand out. The guy, either way, he has more of the good stuff than the bad stuff. He's going to have a long, successful career in the NFL, potentially some Pro Bowls down the line. I like what he brings. He's going to be able to match up with bigger receivers with his frame. He may not be as flashy as Travis Hunter, who's the number one ranked cornerback, obviously, but savvy, IQ, technically sound. The comp that kind of comes to mind for a lot of people is Pat Surtain, the second for the Broncos. Wherever he ends up, you're going to get a guy who, if you already have a number one cornerback, this guy's going to be the perfect Robin to whoever your Batman is. If you don't have a Batman yet, give this guy a year or two. He's going to be that guy.
I don't know what the Batmobile would be considered over in the NFL draft, but that's a guy who can drive passenger or ride shotgun.
Absolutely. That's a better analogy.
Okay, so here's the thing. The Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. Georgia has won national championships in the 2020s, two of them. The Eagles get a lot of players from Georgia. You need players from Georgia on your defense if you want to win. So this was a pretty easy selection for Michael Williams to join the San Francisco 49ers at number 11. And Williams could have easily been, by the way, the top pick if he came out last year. He didn't, and he got some injuries last year too, but he was a 2-year starter. Immediate impact as a freshman. It was very big in the Peach Bowl against Ohio in the national championship semifinal at the Peach Bowl in 2022-23. Junior season wasn't the true breakout year, but he had career best for sacks and tackles. This is a rare mix of bended length for a pass rusher, and NFL teams want to see him develop more of the finesse, but he maximizes his length. He has power advantages. He has length, strength, explosiveness. He's going to be a starter on the edge. He reminds me a lot of Jason Pierre-Paul in the NFL, and that's a guy who has a pretty damn good career. According to The Athletic, and I'm going to quote this exactly, he looks the part with an NFL frame and arms the length of an anaconda. No, I don't want none of that. Thank you very much. Violently tears through tight end blocks. He models his game after Myles Garrett. So you better do something right when you do that. Functional strength, light on his feet. And he is a guy who has a lot of character in Georgia. That's a program that needs some character sometimes, considering their issues at points. The injuries are a problem. Missed 2 games because of a grade 2 left high ankle sprain. People think that might be an issue coming into the NFL. Deep rotation, so he didn't play a lot of snaps in per game in 2024. Only played 33.5 defensive snaps per game. Georgia kind of rotates them out. Wasted movements with the hands. Now, the 49ers are kind of a little bit of a reset. By the way, their defensive coordinator, one Mr. Robert Saleh, by the way, next year. So it's going to be very interesting. And this is a reason why Williams was the just third defensive lineman played in this draft. He is an inside rusher if he needs to be. He can play opposite Nick Bosa if they want to. 49ers love picking D linemen. 7th time in 11 years that they have done that. They didn't actually have any D linemen last year picked in any of the draft itself. Didn't participate in the combine, but this is a guy who can really do some damage on the defense. I'm surprised He went as the top Georgia edge rusher. Spoiler alert for what we might talk about in our final segment. But you can't do too much better than him on your defense. He is going to be a stud. And those anaconda hands are going to get to a lot of people in 2025 right off the bat. The San Francisco 49ers needs a little bit of a defensive reset because of the age that that team showed in 2024. Can't do any better than that.
Nope.
All right, we move on to our last segment, and it's pretty simple. We're going to talk about what we kind of didn't talk about in some of the picks tonight. We have some good defensive players. We have some weird fits, some interesting fits. Jay, I'll start with you. Give me a top 15 pick, or even lower than that if you want that's been picked that you like or don't like.
Well, I mean, you guys know I'm going to talk about the Steelers here. So
good. Another offensive lineman that we get to talk about. Excellent.
No, defensive lineman.
Oh, they went defensive lineman. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and it's kind of why. I mean, I was really, look, Rabbi, I know that you pay a lot more attention to mock drafts than I do. But like, I've been concerned about the possibility that,
yeah,
they would take Shador here, and Tomlin didn't say one way or another.
Which you shouldn't, by the way. You should never,
I mean, and look, they're never going to give it, but I mean, obviously, we know that like we all refer to this time of year as the lying season because PMs and personnel guys don't really, tell you the actual truth. But defensive line, especially interior defensive line, is where the Steelers had the biggest need, especially, they cut Larry Ogunjobi, salary cap reasons. It's amazing that Cam Hayward has managed to keep Father Time at bay as long as he has. Guy's an all-pro later in his career, as late as he is in his career is phenomenal to watch, but you kind of got to prepare for the future. And to me, because of the depth at defensive tackle, the fact that the number 2 ranked defensive tackle in Dane Brugler's, draft guide for the Athletic falls to the Steelers here at 21. I mean, this is just a phenomenal pick. According to one coach who was talking to Bruce Feldman, the aforementioned, Freaks guy. Here's the quote. He was the best interior pass rusher we faced this year. He has great length and athleticism. We schemed a lot of things to make sure he didn't get one-on-ones against us. He wasn't as stout in the running game as Mason Graham. Granted, nobody's as stout in the running game as Mason Graham. But my hope was that either Harmon or Grant would be available here. And to have this guy, 6'5", 313, fourth-year junior, be here is great. Used primarily in the B gap in DC Tosh Lope's multiple front defensive scheme for the Ducks. He kind of flashed some potential at Michigan State before moving to Eugene. This past year was his breakout season, led all D1 interior defensive linemen with 55 pressures, 12 more than the next closest defensive tackle. Overall, 45 tackles, 10.5 tackles for losses, 5 sacks. Actually had 4 pass breakups for a DT, 2 forced fumbles. It's a guy who can win it at the point of attack in a lot of different ways. He forces blockers to attack air with his lateral explosiveness, or he can use his strength and his crafty hands to swat away the reach of blockers as he, gets through the gap to close in on ball carriers. Though the thing you got to, as much as, the big positive, he's led all, D1 interior linemen in pressures, also led all defensive tackles in missed tackles with Tell. So he's got 12. So he's kind of got to work on that. Even the smallest improvement in his finishing ability to get into the backfield would have resulted in double-digit sacks. So he does need to kind of increase his pass rushing technique. And there's no better interior defensive lineman to kind of have as a mentor when it comes to pass rushing as Cam Hayward. So this is a great situation for him to land in as well. Harmon's highly active and he's really disruptive, consistently finds ways to, escape from his blocks. and be a pass rusher and a run stuffer. This guy is scheme neutral. Um, could play anywhere from one technique to five technique. Um, he has the versatility to play between either Hayward or Keanu Benton as the nose tackle in the base or alongside him as a 3-4 defensive end in a 4I/5 technique. He's quick, disruptive, great instincts. Has a bit of a rip move that gets him some early wins, but he's going to have to add some counters to that because we know offensive tackles in the NFL pretty much seen everything. So you got to have something more than a rip move or a club rush. Guy has very good awareness of in the run game. He doesn't get displaced by down blocks. He's really good at shooting gaps to disrupt and redirect runners. He knows how to anchor down versus double teams. Great feel for the game. He's positional, versatile, which is great as we talked about. Great at the point of attack. This is a great pick for the Steelers. It gives them a need at a position where they have to look, or granted, already have two solid guys, but you can never have enough depth when you're a 3-4 base defense. Enough depth that guys who are this type of position versatile gives them somebody to build on who can kind of learn at the feet of one of the best guys to ever play the position. And when Cam is ready to, hopefully by the time Cam's ready to hang him up, Harmon is ready to step in and become the next Cam Hayward. I absolutely love this pick for the Steelers at 21.
By the way, I just wanted to mention Anthony, the Chargers picking Omarion Hampton at number 22. Going to be very interesting pairing him with Najee in that backfield next year. Najee Harris, who went to the Chargers in the offseason.
Rabbi, are you feeling a little Michigan kind of situation, a Corum and Donovan?
I mean, that's what he's going to have every single year. It's what he had last year with Dobbins and Edwards. So might as well keep it going. You could just plug in any two people every single year, and that's exactly what that backfield's going to be. Not a wrong thing to do. So
Jim Harbaugh is who he is, and so you kind of can't be surprised that this is the way the Chargers went. I think that's a good pick for them.
Anthony, what are you looking at from the first round so far?
One pick I am actually kind of impressed with is the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I give the Dallas Cowboys an actual compliment. Hell has officially frozen over in 2025, ladies and gentlemen. But no, Tyler Booker at number 12, I think it's a really good pick. When you consider the Dallas Cowboys have to rebuild an offensive line. Zach Martin is retired. Next stop for him is Canton, more than likely. And you realize that's a running game that suffered mightily last season. And obviously, here's the thing. Letting Tony Pollard walk turned out to be just as bad for the Dallas Cowboys as the Giants letting Saquon Barkley go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe not as dramatic, but still just as bad. When you consider
Dowdle did rush for 1,000 yards last year, which is shocking when you think about it back then, because you never heard Rico Dowdle actually having good games in any way, shape, or form.
But the running game just didn't have the explosiveness on the pop, and we know obviously Dak Prescott works extremely well when the play action is available in his arsenal and is able to take those deep shots. I thought they would probably go receiver and try to give Prescott another weapon besides CeeDee Lamb. I think this is more of someone else in the room making the decisions and not Jerry Jones. And realize that the Cowboys are at their best when they have one of the better offensive lines in football. You think about those teams in the 90s and even the teams in the late 2010s. The offensive line was the core foundation of those teams, and because they got older, injuries has been a concern too. They had to kind of rebuild that. Some pre-draft analysis on Booker covers up defenders and gets some push in the run game. Footwork solid on the zone runs. Takes sound angles, work up to the second level. Outstanding competitor who plays with an edge and a whistle. Doesn't change directions well on tape, but he's an effective pass blocker who delivers at the point of attack. Outstanding length makes it tough to get around. Size makes him hard to move. Identifies the size, communicates with teammates, picks out line starts and pressures very well. But more importantly, and this is according to Athletic, he is a team captain who described himself as a natural born leader, gets the most out of his teammate. One NFL scout says, and I quote, he keeps everyone accountable in that locker room, which is in Dallas very important when you realize part of the problems that I think a lot of insiders and a lot of media pundits have pointed out is the lack of accountability as far as the Dallas Cowboys, and especially when adversity fell at their doorstep. Um we've seen time and time again. If it's not Jerry Jones saying something that's kind of cringe, if it's not Michael Parsons being a podcaster saying something that might be
Okay,
a little cringy.
okay.
I
I
know,
do want to say,
I know, I'm
I,
now,
I,
but
I do want to say,
I think a young guy, I think a young man who's not afraid of not just holding others accountable, but holding himself accountable. Um, it represents a really good cultural shift that I think the Cowboys need as well, and not just on the field, but in the locker room. And I do think that they need some cultural dynamics that has to kind of balance itself out a little bit. And you think about those teams tonight, what made them so good was the fact that there was accountability in the locker room, whether it was Jimmy Johnson, whether it was Troy Aikman. It was someone that was going to hold his teammates' butts to the fire when games didn't go his way, and drafting someone who can bring that to you right out of the gate, particularly on an offensive line that's going to be rebuilding from the ground up. It's a really good pick for Dallas, and I'm just interested in seeing what they do with the rest of this offensive line to kind of try to get back to that team that they were just a few years ago, where they were a really good team, a good solid team that allowed Dak Prescott to really pick apart the secondary and take those deep shots downfield.
by the way, Matthew Golden just getting picked number 23 also to the Packers. So another underperforming wide receiver that they're going to have in their wide receiver room. So good luck. Okay, I said this very simply a couple of minutes ago, and I'm going to say this again. Georgia produces winning defensive players. So you are stupid if you let people from Georgia drop in the draft. And believe it or not, another team from Georgia, the pro team from Georgia, the Atlanta Falcons, had never picked a Georgia player in the first round of the draft until tonight when picking Jalen Walker from Georgia. This is an edge rusher that pretty much is a projected top 10 talent, and you get him at number 15, which is pretty damn good. He was an off-ball linebacker and edge rusher last year, 6.5 sacks, 38 solo tackles. You're going to a team that finished 31st in the NFL last year with 31 sacks. Now, gifted in every way, shape, or form. Again, Georgia players are very gifted in almost every sense of their defense. Box presence, versatility. He does have anticipation issues when it comes to rushing the quarterback. That could be something to kind of look forward to, but Atlanta did not re-sign Matthew Judon. They did not re-sign Lorenzo Carter. They do have Leonard Floyd free agency, but that is a veteran. They also released Grady Jarrett, so they need players. And I think Walker is the best Georgia player in the draft. I'm surprised that the other guy who I just talked about went a little bit higher than he did at number 11 in Williams. So it's a good pick. You have, again, 31st in pass rush win rate last year for Atlanta, 34.2%, 29th in total quarterback pressures. A lot of his production came in the final 2 years. He was with Georgia, second best linebacker on most people's boards in this class. I think this is a steal for the Atlanta Falcons here at number 15. Need pick local. And again, it's shocking that they've never even touched a Georgia Bulldog player in round one until tonight.
That's
insane, right?
That is amazing.
They play in your backyard. They play in your backyard. How does that happen? But I think And I want to close out tonight with some closing thoughts. And I'll start.
Can I get my last thought in here before you do?
Okay, your last thought in here. I was going to go first and then let you guys talk.
Oh,
But go
okay, then
ahead.
go ahead then. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go first and actually kind of get this discussion in since you did talk about your Steeler in this. So we are
Yeah,
on
no,
to
no.
the closing
I've
thoughts.
got my. The funny thing is, if it wasn't for that, the person I'm going to talk about in our closing thoughts would have been my pick there. My would have been who else I talked about, but
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just talk really quick.
yeah, I'm going to give my BFFs team a little bit of love, and just annoy the hell out of you by closing the show by talking about one more Michigan Wolverine.
How many more Michigan Wolverines can you pick in this draft? It's insane.
Just one more, Rabbi.
I'm sure there's another one that could go, and
Probably,
I'll
but
tap you. I'll tap you on the shoulder. I'll tap you on the
we've
shoulder.
got one more.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of talk about this is a kind of keep it simple, stupid draft, and I think this is something that I've actually seen a lot tonight. How teams who had needs got them. I was just talking about Atlanta. Even when you're talking in the beginning of the draft, the Titans, you were never going to get them away from Cam Ward. I think the surprising thing is we did have the Hunter trade. I think that actually showed that this is Jacksonville needed a playmaker and they were going to get him. It might have cost a little too much, but again, if you're going to get him, go get him. Offensive linemen went a ton in this first round. You got offensive tackles that go. Teams that needed players or needed playmakers. If you needed a player to fill a position like an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, you got it. If you were a team like Chicago who needed, or Indianapolis who needed a playmaker, you got him. And I think that's one thing I'll take from this draft. Sometimes you don't need to have the surprises. Sometimes your team gets built the way it should get built with obvious and simple picks. We may not look at it this way when we talk about it in a year or two from now. We might think this is one of the worst draft classes ever. But as for tonight, we look back at it, and it was pretty damn good when it comes to you got a need, you filled the need, you moved on. So we'll see what happens. Anthony, go ahead.
I would say this. By the way, my advice for anyone who don't get drafted this weekend, keep working. Okay, there are some very good players that did not get drafted and turned out to be pretty damn good. But as far as the draft tonight, it's not exactly been chalk because we didn't expect Jacksonville to kind of trade up. Nope. To get Travis Hunter, but for the most part, for the local teams, I think addressing the need right away was something that they really could not screw up absolutely because a team. There are two teams that really needed to they have a larger list of things to do as far as putting together a football team that can be competitive for next season. But as far as the draft overall, I mean, obviously, this is what the fifth season that we've done, fifth year that we've done this in this format. Obviously, with Joe chiming in as well, and obviously, actually, here's a funny part. 2 days. Number one, I was very close to being a Michigan Wolverine as a high school senior. Unfortunately, I did not get in. That was one of the schools on my choice list. So yes, Rabbi, you could have missed out on having me as a classmate. I could have joined Jay's Michigan.
You picked the right. You picked right. You picked the right one.
Yeah, I didn't become a Wolverine, but I showed my pride at some point.
There you go.
But also too is this would be my 15th year being part of On the Sports Line. So obviously, I just want to say to you guys, Shaw Roman, obviously Steve, Pedro, Lisa, thank you for inviting that random guy that you interviewed outside Madison Garden that fateful day to be part of this family. I just want to say thank you so much. I'm always always look forward to doing our shows and obviously the group banters and Top as well. I know you're always watching. I gotta catch up to you because we gotta talk wrestling at some point. But all of you guys, ladies, everyone, thank you so much for having me part of this team for the last 15 years. And you know what? I got a water bottle, so here's the 15 more.
All right,
Rabbi,
talk about your thing, and then I want to go back and I may do one more thing real quick.
yep. Look, I mean, this is the NFL draft never fails to provide us with something that makes us go, didn't see that coming. But yeah, I agree with you guys that this, for the most part, so far in the first round, you've seen teams draft smartly, for the most part. I mean, the Jaguars traded up, and yeah, it might look like Travis Hunter's a luxury, but a guy who can do what he can do kind of helps you fill out potentially two spots on your roster for only one guy. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. We talked about how the way that trade worked out for Cleveland was great. Here's the thing. I'm going to talk about that one last Michigan guy, and that's Kenneth Grant, who was the number 3 rated defensive tackle. And I said that I hope either he or Harmon fell to the Steelers at 20. Grant went to Miami at number 13, and this is such a great pick for them. It's just the epitome of a team drafting smartly. The guy who can be a really good, he's already projects as an early down NFL starter. Granted, he's already comes in. He's going to be a really bona fide run stopper. Got potential 3 down upside. I'm gonna kind of just read the Athletic Scott Duckerman his grade on the pick. Granted, this is a little earlier than a lot of people expected Grant to go. I kind of figured he'd be closer to being available at 21, at 20, with the Steelers. But this is a guy who can take up blockers, which is what the Dolphins need in their 3-4 defense. 6'5", 6'3", almost 6'4", 330. Perfect defensive tackle to play over center or between the A gap, take up some double teams. He and Mason Graham were a hell of a tag team in Michigan's defensive line, and a big reason why they shut down running attacks everywhere over the last couple of years. Not going to be a big pass rushing guy, but I think ultimately he's going to give them some of that. Here's the bottom line. They had so many holes on the defense. Just about anyone they picked here on this side of the ball would have made some sense, but Grant's going to be immediate starter for them. And it's such a great pick that I'm really happy. Nisa, be really happy with this pick. It's a great pick for your Dolphins. And Rabbi, something that Joe and I kind of were talking about just happened.
Yep, Jackson Dart was the pick as the Giants traded back up to pick number 25. Gave up obviously they switched their second round pick with Houston, and they gave up a pair of third round picks, one this year, one next year. Let's just do some quick thoughts about that before we go. Jay, have the Giants found their quarterback in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I said, I was kind of torn between Dart being my pick here for the Giants because I thought he would be available. The only reason I went with Tyler Shuff is because I figured if the Giants did not trade back up, they were willing to either hope that Dart fell to them as as an early second rounder, or if he got nabbed before that, Shuff would be the guy that they would go with. But as I said to you when we were talking about Dart, or when we were talking about Shuff, that as I said to Joe, if the Giants were going to trade back up into the first round, it would be to get Jackson Dart. I think it's a good pick. They got a good deal out of it. 25, if you're going to pick Dart, this is where you go. Again, he's going to step into the same situation I talked about with Shuff. 2 veteran quarterbacks ahead of him on the roster. He does not have to rush into it. He will have time to develop and learn from a couple of pros without any pressure of having to be the Giants' savior as a rookie quarterback, as Daniel Jones was, as Eli Manning was, though Manning obviously also did not start right away. If the Giants have a bad season, There's obviously going to be, there's going to be screaming from the fans to let Dart, get onto the field. But I think he's in a good situation for himself. Dable, we know, has a decent track record with quarterbacks. And Rabbi, if you're correct that with what they've done, has bought Dable and Shane, not just this year coming up, but the one after that, then yeah.
That's what Joe said, and I guess I agree with it. If you're gonna pick someone like Dirt, you would have to at least have a chance at him, especially
Right.
from Dayball.
Exactly. And I think look, we talked about this in our Giants post-mortem that John Mara's big thing is you got to get the quarterback situation settled. Once you have that solved, you're halfway there basically to kind of getting on back on the road to being competitive. We know what Russell Wilson can do. We know what Jameis Winston can do. So hopefully we don't see Jameis too much because, as I've said before, Jameis is the John Starks of NFL quarterbacks. He can throw you into a game or out of a game.
How dare you sully the name of John Starks, by the way?
I watched John Starks go 2 for 19. I can sully his name all I want.
No, don't mention that stuff. I love
Yes, I
John.
can. Hey, but that's the comp for Jameis Winston.
There's
the guy to throw 30 TDs and 30 interceptions in the same year. The comp matches. Okay. But yeah, no, this is a great situation for Dart to come into. I definitely think he has the potential to be the next good Giants quarterback. And unlike Daniel Jones, he comes in not having to have all that. Got to start right away. Got to be the face of the franchise, savior quarterback right away. This worked out really well for the Giants. They got they got the best player available at number 3. Most likely got their quarterback of the future at 25. This is so far a really good day for them. In terms of going to a bad team, this is the best situation Dart could have landed in because he has 2 veterans ahead of him. He does not have to get thrown into the deep end day one.
Anthony, go ahead after that John Stark slander that just happened on that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jay. This is the best situation for a bad team you go to. And Jackson, and look, the Giants, obviously, the Giants obviously has some experience with Ole Miss quarterbacks. We just talked about Eli Manning. And Eli Manning obviously did not start right away. Kurt Warner was kind of the starting quarterback for the first half of that season. And then obviously Eli Manning took the reins from there. But Dart goes into a situation where he's going to be learning from a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Russell Wilson. A quarterback and Jameis Winston, yes, for the inconsistencies that he had on the field, there's no question. Jameis Winston is a big locker room guy. Like this, just all the things I have heard about Winston is how good of a teammate that Jameis Winston is, as far as being in the locker room, as far as morale, as far as lifting up his teammates. And he gets to just kind of hold a clipboard. And just learn from, and just be able to sit and learn learn that first year. He's not going to be somebody that's going to be called on to save the franchise right out of the gate. No. And I think that was one of the things with Daniel Jones. Evidently seeing his confidence disappear after after he got the team to the playoffs just a few short seasons ago. With Dart, that's somebody that that obviously has the arm. He has everything that you want out of a quarterback. But also, Brian Dable and Joe Shane has the history of being able to develop good young quarterbacks. Case in point, Josh Allen in Buffalo. And that is some of the comparisons that Dable saw in Jackson Dart. So I think this has been a good night for the Giants because they got the best of they got the edge rusher that will help the defense out significantly by the gate. And they have a quarterback that could be the future of the franchise that don't have to be thrown to the fire right away. It could be a guy who can learn, who can get snaps in the preseason, obviously. Just learn the fundamentals, the basis of the offense, but also be able to learn from 2 very professional quarterbacks as far as how to handle yourself in the quarterback room. In practice, also off the field as well. So this is a great situation for Jackson Dart to land in. Um, like I said, this is a good night for the New York Football Giants. And considering what happened last offseason, Shane and Brian Dable had to get this night right.
Yeah,
They had to get this.
without a doubt.
They had to do it correctly because right now they're in the hot seat. I mean, everything that's happened the last 12 months, they had to win. The Giants have to win the offseason. And this is a great start for the franchise.
Yeah, 100% agree with both of you. I think I'm glad that Dart they did. I wouldn't say minimal, but it's a pretty fair package just to move up about what ended up being 9 spots, but back into the first round. I think they did a very good job here, and we'll see what happens. Dart's going to have a little bit of breathing room, which is good because it's not just one person he's behind; it's two. So Winston would be the first one to start as long as everything works out. And if Dart has a good trade at camp, he ends up number 2 on the depth chart. We'll see what happens, but I like this pick a lot. I think the Giants made a good choice here. All right. With that being said, we're done. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. 2nd round grade, 7th round talent, they say on Dave Bergler's board. I am the Shador Sanders of podcasting. If you want to see any of the many hours of this show or any of the hours you might have missed, come on down and log on and subscribe to youtube.com/onthesportslines. And we have this thing live and have other content as well at facebook.com/onthesportslines. Jay, got some X/Twitter to promote?
I do. Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. I posted a link to a bit of a fun story. You guys ever wonder where the ESPN's iconic "The Pick Is In" chime came from? Well, the Athletic's Dana Bardall kind of dug into that story to try to get to the bottom of it, and it's a well-written piece and worth your time to check out.
And Jay, go get you some rest, go drink some fluids, get you some soup, and
more at this point, Ant, I'm going straight to bed.
We'll see you guys in 2 weeks for another edition of On the Sports Slides. Until then, rest up and enjoy the weekend of sports. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
good night, everyone.